The character wandered for a long time through the snow-white expanses for 2 months, all in order to find millennia-old ginseng. It can be considered that the young man has achieved the impossible, only the guy wanted to take the desired plant. A notification appeared stating that the item was missing, but the entire plane was saturated with the smell of rare ginseng. Elvis was furious. Who dared to take such a rarity right from under Elvis's nose? You have to walk around. This person could still be nearby. Tracking magic activated. The target is within 300 meters. The protagonist has begun the search. Search magic has led Max out to the cave. The footprints lead inside. There is no choice. He must explore the cave. As the boy stood at the entrance and decided to begin his research, a note of a familiar smell appeared in the air. Following the interesting aroma, Elvis wandered into the kitchen. Someone was making ginseng soup. The exquisite dish was almost ready. It exuded an incredible fragrance. After the cook had cooked the soup, he slowly poured himself a plate and began the meal. Elvis was quietly indignant when suddenly a stranger offered his guest a dinner with ginseng. The young man came out of his hiding place. He could not believe that the guy would eat such a valuable product so lightly. The cook did not understand the indignation of the visitor and calmly continued to dine on fresh soup. All those interminably long days and nights as he tried to find the rare plant flew before McSal's eyes. Where can you find a person who makes soup from thousand-year-old ginseng? This is the stupidest use of it. The stranger turned out to be very friendly. The character was confused. Lack of satiety is a rare condition in which no matter how much a person eats, they do not experience a sense of satisfaction. In this disease, a person eats everything. The average food consumed is 15,000, 20,000 calories per day. Tyler Lee had just such a disease. His height is 185 centimeters. His weight is 170 kilograms, and he has a large build. The patient once again came to see his attending physician, Roland Brown, a professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Seoul Hospital. The doctor, during the conversation, asked his patient if he continued to eat cherry tomatoes. Lee's character took out his container of tomatoes and noticed that even tomatoes were gaining weight. If dietary foods are consumed in large quantities, it is still possible to gain weight, Professor Roland asked how much tomato the patient consumes per day. At this point, Tyler was embarrassed. The doctor's question took the guy by surprise, since he ate about 5,000 cherry tomatoes a day. Dr. Brown called his patient a piglet, a vegetarian, and the psychiatrist was too blunt. Lee began to make excuses that he was actively engaged in sports for 4 hours every day, after which the guy received the title of a healthy piglet, a vegetarian. Also, the character took first place. According to the results of the exam, his status changed to a smart, healthy piglet, a vegetarian. The young man inherited this disease from his father, who was also quite large. Unfortunately, lack of satiety is quite a dangerous disease. Patients need to work themselves in order to continue to enjoy a full life. We grew up in the house of rich parents. A healthy piglet was in demand everywhere. It was useless to talk to the doctor. Dr. Brown allows himself this behavior for a reason. The weight has become too much. It becomes really dangerous. Tyler knows that weight is already life-threatening. And the hardest thing is that the character can't eat what he wants. The doctor praised his patient that if he didn't chew something all the time, he would become anxious. For such a patient, maintaining a weight of 170 kilograms is already a miracle. Lee is doing well with such a difficult disease. Professor Roland decided to offer the guy a new method of treatment that can help the patient. This is a virtual game of Ascent. Lee has tried similar treatments in the past and they have not helped him. If Tyler plays a game where you don't even taste it, the disease can only get worse, as it was in Versailles. But this time, everything can go differently. In Asante, the tastes are really felt. The doctor himself tried to play. In this place, you can eat at least 100 doshiraks at 1 o'clock in the morning. You still won't get fat. You can eat whatever you want. Dr. Brown's words gave the guy hope. He would be able to taste his favorite dishes again without harming his health. Lee spent time working out in the pool under the guidance of his trainer, Obito Sanchez, known as a fitness trainer for the stars. Sanchez offered his client a break. He has been swimming in the pool for a long time without a break. Tyler refused the offer. Obito asked Lee to monitor his well-being, but Lee was determined as the doctor looked serious at the appointment. The goal of this method of treatment is to achieve a feeling of satiety psychologically with the help of the Asante game. If you eat something there, it can be followed by a yo-yo effect. The taste that you have tasted in the virtual world will want to taste in the real world. The risks are great, but the question is whether there is any other choice. Tyler will not be able to eat only tomatoes for the rest of his life. After finishing his long physical activity, the character thanked the trainer for his work, and when he came out of the water, Lee felt hungry again. That damn appetite is more or less fine as long as Tyler is exercising, but once the exercise is over, everything is back to normal. The main character stood and looked at the plate of salad. It looked incredibly delicious. Vegetables have the fewest calories, which is one of the reasons why Tyler became a vegetarian. The guy had a light snack after the workout. Today, the young man coped with several kilograms of food faster than yesterday. It was easy to swallow, and Obito sat down with his client when Tyler decided to ask the coach if Asanta was an interesting game. Sanchez admitted that this is the most interesting game at the moment, but Lee decided to try it. The coach decided to ask if the guy really wanted to achieve new records through the game, and Tyler nodded in response. If Lee has already taken it, then first he will achieve the best results, and then he will give up, which he just does not have thanks to this approach. The protagonist was not only slim despite his best efforts, he only managed to keep the weight in one place. After an exciting conversation, Tyler got up to start getting ready to go home. He decided to ask Obito one last place where his father was. The protagonist's eyes darkened, his body became heavier, it was more difficult to stand on his feet, and Lee lost consciousness. Sanchez tried to revive the guy, but it didn't work. Tyler's name sounded all over the hallway. The employees called an ambulance. Lee's condition has deteriorated. His body is holding on with the last of its strength. Liposuction is impossible to do this time. The character came to his senses. He didn't understand what he did wrong in this life. No matter how much effort he put in, his appetite only gets worse. The father came to see his son. The doctors say that he was in shock because of the persistent sports. William Lee must have heard about the return to the game. He was against video games, but this is a different situation. The father wanted to relieve the tension in the air, so he sat down next to his son and began to list the names of the dishes. Tyler gave up in the game, after which he decided to ask William if he would hate his son if he started playing video games. The man realized that the guy was talking about a new method of treatment. If Tyler did not do anything all day and at the same time eat, then William would be happy. However, the father asked his son to promise one thing, that he asked that Tyler have fun and have a good time. The protagonist promised to fulfill his parents' wish and start playing Asanta immediately after being discharged from the hospital. After recovering, the guy came to his coach, who had just delivered a specially made large D console to Lee's size. If something goes wrong, the medical team will always be nearby, and it is also difficult for a beginner to master without the support of someone with a high level. So Tyler can count on the support of the team. Obito promised to help him get used to the new game. Lee was about to get into the console when he remembered that he did not know Sanshin's nickname. The coach was embarrassed because he did not plan to divulge his nickname. With nowhere else to go, Obito decided to whisper his name in the game. He was called the General. Even for the protagonist, it was too much. Even for Lee, this nickname was too much, he exclaimed in surprise and repeated the name too loudly. The coach was dissatisfied with the fact that the nickname sounded loud to the whole room and everyone present heard it. Tyler plunged into the device and eagerly put on his helmet. Finally, Sanchez reminded the client to eat more delicacies. The team believed that this method would help. The main character entered the game. At the stage of character customization, the guy looked at himself from the outside. During character customization, the guy can change hair color, body weight, and skin color. Tyler had only one wish. He chose a weight of 73 kilograms. He began to look pretty cool. In the game, Lee did not rename the character and kept his name, and the training began. The character found himself in a village for beginners. Here, he will learn the basic skills necessary for the game. Bally, the NPS in charge of basic training, this guy looks just like a real person. The basic quest began immediately. You need to attack the scarecrow 50 times. As a reward, Tyler will receive stale bread and mineral water. To open the task window, all you have to do is think about it or say the word out loud. Bread, a reward for the dieter. Baked goods are one of the most delicious things in the world. Lee asked Bally to give him bread first, and then the guy would take on the task. But this is not according to the rules. The protagonist really wanted to eat some bread. He couldn't think of anything else. With no choice but to take on the quest, Tyler has promised to do whatever it takes to eat this bread. The character began to diligently complete the task. He attracted the attention of other players with his incredible speed, as if he knew how to wield a sword. Lee did an amazing job. His punches are clean, no unnecessary movements. His future is full of prospects. Similar to the quest window, a guy can find out his status by saying a single word or just thinking about it. Using bonus points, the player can increase their status. Increasing their strength by 1 increases their physical attack by 3. If everything Obito says is true, then by increasing his durability in the beginning, Lee will benefit more. The character was happy to receive his reward. For the first time in so many years of battling the disease, he can safely eat food without thinking about calories. It was the first time Bally had ever seen anyone so happy with ordinary bread. Someone nearby did not like this award. The players were loudly indignant. The players discussed that the bread was just disgusting. The guy decided to drink only water. These people don't know how to appreciate the little things. They're too spoiled in the real world. How long it had been since Tyler had enjoyed that wonderful flavor of baked goods. I wonder if it's made with rice or yeast. Maybe it's wheat bread. Cold and stale, Lee feels as if he has bitten off the crust of a fresh baguette. The moment he puts the bread in his mouth, he begins to roll a piece over his tongue. The bread becomes soft. Billy, looking at the player, wondered if it was really so delicious. Tyler's eyes were shining with happiness. He couldn't tear himself away from the cherished pastry. The NPS was surprised. During these days, many people complained about this type of food. A non-player character suggested that if Lee hits the simulator with his sword 50 more times, he will receive the reward again. The protagonist was surprised. Billy was going to give him bread for nothing. The NPS reiterated that not just for nothing, but for the completed task, which is to hit the scarecrow 50 more times. The guy has filled his satiety to 100%. Further eating will not increase it. Apparently that's what Dr. Brown was talking about. Tyler was ready to eat more bread. He picked up his sword and went on a mission. NPS gave out 2 additional rewards to Lee. Their proximity increased by 1 point. At the same time, the durability of the character has also increased. This is a special reward for a prolonged attack. Billy advised the boy not to continue increasing durability with this method, as killing the monster gives 5 bonus points. However, Tyler knew this. The player told the instructor that he was as smart as he was handsome. Billy laughed, which attracted the attention of the other players. They had never seen this NPS laugh. The protagonist finished playing. At the moment it was necessary to take a break, he left the game. The employees asked if the customer managed to eat. Tyler had a great meal, ate a lot of bread, and was incredibly happy, but his expression was sad. The character was upset that it was just a game, but the food was delicious. Roland asked what the patient ate in the game. Obito couldn't believe if Lee was talking about those tough crackers that were handed out at the beginning. The protagonist asked the doctor if he could return to the game in half an hour, to which he received a positive answer. Tyler decided he had to hurry back and eat more of that stale bread. Sanchez asked the guy if he had finished his training. The client should have already entered the rookie zone. However, the protagonist admitted that he has been attacking the scarecrow since the first quest. The coach was right. It was time for explanations. Tyler was repeating the basic task because he wanted more bread. It looks like his transition to the beginner's area will take some time. It's time to finish eating bread. Tyler thanked the waiter who brought this character several bowls of salad. While eating food, Lee looked through an article on what to eat in Ascent. Someone managed to eat the bark from a pine tree. After flipping through many pages, the main character found something interesting that you should definitely try. Tyler felt sick. Obito was scared for the client and asked for an ambulance. Dr. Brown told Sanchez to take the tools out of the bag. However, Lee was fine. He read that if you leave the area with a scarecrow, you can find chickens. The coach was really scared. It turned out that it was just chickens. They were really easy to kill. Fried chickens are absolutely delicious, especially deep fried. Just thinking about it made Tyler's heart stop for a second. Billy was glad to see his new friend again. He advised the player to try hard and have a good meal. Well, it's time to get down to the task and beat the scarecrow properly. During this time, it managed to get dark. Someone finished the first task and demanded his reward. The guy accused the instructor of treating the player like nothing. The NPS replied that he did to the character the same way he did to him. Billy couldn't stand this attitude and told the newcomer to get out of here. The stranger promised not to let NPS get away with it and advised him to keep an eye on his back. The instructor is very tired for this shift. It's time for him to change with another NPS. By this time, the replacement man came up and said that Billy had done a great job today. The new instructor spotted Tyler. He looked pretty happy. Lee ate the bread he had been rewarded with satisfaction. Billy hoped that tomorrow the boy would be as good as he was today. The instructor was about to go home when a new friend called out to him, and the NPS slowed down. Tyler asked if the NPC had had dinner that night, and Billy was surprised by the question. The NPS replied in the negative. He planned to have a snack when he came home. Then the main character enthusiastically replied that he would like to cook a delicious dinner for his new friend. Since it is not possible to get tools at the moment, the only way to cook food tastier than stale bread is to borrow the instructor's tools. Surprisingly, Billy seemed to know what Tyler was thinking, and without thinking twice, he agreed. Lee tried to pretend that he wasn't only thinking about food, but he came out just a terrible liar. And when Tyler came home, he was delighted. It's been many years since Billy brought someone home. There were a lot of players who tried to be friendly with NPS. More often than not, they tried to get an extra reward or something, but no one wanted to visit the instructor. Billy thinks his friend came here for a good meal. He thinks he can trust Tyler. The food kit surprised Lee if that's all the NPS has. Asanta's protectors, like Billy, are provided with the same food every day. The instructor can buy some ingredients from the village if needed. However, the sim prefers simple dishes since eating alone. Tyler, moved by his friend's story, promised to cook the most delicious meal that day. The main character did not have to think long. He decided to cook garlic soup. After a while, the guy called the owner of the house for dinner. NPS was surprised by the amount of soup. Tyler has prepared as much food as he respects the instructor. Apparently, the player has a lot of respect for Billy. The outer layer of the bread is crispy, while the inside is soft and warm. It has a sweet, but at the same time slightly salty taste that bathes the tongue. The savory soup flows into the guy's mouth, after which the dry garlic bread melts and takes on a creamy flavor. Billy laughed. He remarked that every time Lee ate, he looked like the happiest man in the world. And now the guest looks very happy. The instructor decided to admit that he also enjoys this great food. There is nothing that can make you happier than a meal well prepared with soul. Every day Billy is the same. Every day he goes to work, does his duties, comes home and finds nothing but emptiness inside. There's nothing more lonely than going home where you live alone. For the first time, someone offers to eat together, whatever the reasons. Billy had been alone for so long that this house was destined to sink into silence, but the sound of the food being prepared for him. Having together really filled this house with warmth and happiness after it had been completely empty for so long. Food can change depending on whether you're eating in company or alone, and that food can help imprint a person in your memory. It seems that the protagonist will remember tonight's dinner forever. The words that NPS said touched the character. Tyler asked the instructor if he could take more bread, and the NPC nodded in agreement. Billy noticed that the guest had finished his soup and began to eat another portion as if nothing had happened. While the guest was busy, the instructor decided to get something out of his closet. He climbed into the farthest corner. Billy took out his sword and decided to give it to his new friend, who gave him a memorable dinner. The protagonist was speechless. The instructor gave him a rare sword, after which the guy asked why the NPS did it. Billy asked if Tyler didn't want to accept his gift, causing the player to draw a sword and promise to use it with gratitude. This weapon has one good skill. Billy's sword strike is suitable for both attack and effective strike. Finally, Lee asked the instructor for permission to take his utensils and cooking utensils. He knew that this was what the guy had come for. The next day, Tyler immediately went to hunt chickens. Having come to the right location, the main character observed an unusual picture. Billy advised his friend to find Rennie's instructor. He also said that the player was able to spot her right away. Finding the girl was not difficult. Lee immediately approached the instructor and said hello. Rennie gave the guy the task of killing 5 chickens. This will be the first time the character will use the instructor's sword. The girl recognized her friend's weapon. Tyler confirmed that it was Billy's sword. The instructor wanted to ask how the player got it. However, the protagonist has already run away to perform his new task. Only one can get Billy's sword, the one whose strength has been recognized as an NPC. Rennie looked at the player leaving and wondered who this guy was, while Lee looked at the chicken and thought about how strange it looked. The bird looked at the protagonist with a fierce look, a very strange chicken. Tyler decided to look at the other birds. They all looked at him with hatred. At least they allowed the enemy to draw their sword first. The hen did not cluck for long. One blow was enough for the player to silence the bird. Most players need 3 hits to achieve this. It's all because the guy has a Billy sword. No, it only seems that it's only about the instructor's weapon. This character is not as simple as it seems. Then it's because he raised his stats by attacking the scarecrow. While Rennie was pondering, Tyler took out the cooking tools. The instructor could not understand what the beginner was doing. He sat down on the grass and began to butcher the prey. Tyler caught the eyes of the rest of the players. They couldn't believe he was going to make soup right there. Lee wished he had chicken seasoning, but there's nothing he can do about it at the moment. He would like to eat fried chicken, but that's not possible now, so the player decided to make chicken ginseng soup, a traditional Korean health dish. Usually garlic, dates, glutinous rice, leeks, and other products are added to the soup, but for now you have to use what you have. After taking the first bite, the guy got burned. The chicken is only from the fire, very hot. But despite this, the dish turned out to be extremely delicious. After an endless amount of vegetables and forced veganism, the chicken was divine. The protagonist quickly coped with the soup. He did not leave a single piece of meat on the bones. Tyler decided to kill a few dozen more chickens to get his fill of chicken soup. Rennie watched the rookie. He was special. When the girl looked at the player, she saw him as Billy's instructor. There was a murmur among the other players, and a particularly huge chicken appeared, a golden one. If someone manages to defeat her, they will get a goose that lays golden eggs. Beginners rush to attack the bird. If you break one of its eggs, then the owner will receive 200,000 gold. It lays one egg per day. As expected, the chicken is not easy to get. She easily dealt with the attacking players. It made Tyler think about fried chicken legs. He wasn't interested in money. The guy was only thinking about food. The newcomers were perplexed. It's not a chicken, it moves like a human, it even dodges blows. Lee tried to catch the golden bird alone, which further surprised the players. The guy activated the brave man's punch. His attack dealt 20% more damage, allowing the rookie to successfully complete the hunt for the exclusive monster. The protagonist received 82,000 gold coins, but he only thought about the best way to cook a chicken carcass. The item has two skills: to lay an egg once a day, which gives 200,000 gold, and once a day to lay 10 eggs, which are much tastier than normal ones. But you can only choose one of the skills. Of course, Tyler chose the second option. He got the hidden achievement of someone who knew the joy of eating. The next day, Lee, as usual, was only interested in the food. The buttery flavor inherent only in this dish added zest. Instructor Rennie, she has the same energy as Billy. Among most Asanta players, they are known as instructors who are easily angered. Also referred to as the standard instructor or the best instructors, Tyler was thinking about the best way to get closer to Rennie. The girl, noticing Tyler's gaze, showed him what she was hiding under the cloth. There was soy paste and potatoes. A treat quite different from ginseng chicken, a tangy, sweet food known for its delicious taste. The instructor asked how Billy was doing there. In the past, they were in the same squad. Billy was the head of the girl. Tyler asked why the instructor didn't go and visit her former boss. The protagonist quickly realized that if he helped Rennie, he would be able to easily buy food. That's definitely it. Lee can feel the signals coming from the girl. Apart from Tyler, there are no more Outlanders who can return to the field with scarecrows. The player's words surprised Rennie. If the boy could return to the training field, the newcomer explained that after receiving the sword as a gift, he had the opportunity to visit Billy. Tyler is a player who can see the instructor whenever he wants, and Lee has already eaten about 200 chickens since Rennie started watching him. It looks like the guy isn't going to stop, so he's going to stay here for a few more days. Rennie handed him the groceries. The protagonist was really happy when the girl brought the player food. Now she has the opportunity to convey her feelings to Billy. Spicy and sweet seasonings go well with rice, giving birth to the taste of the best food. Before Lee could finish his meal, he noticed that Rennie had approached him again, clearly wanting to know something. The instructor asked the player if he was busy. Tyler was just finishing the rest of the potatoes. This time, NPS brought rice. She gave it to the boyfriend in exchange for tighter talking to Billy about her. The player had been waiting for this moment. He remembered how much the instructor had at home. As soon as Lee voiced this, the girl asked again if the rookie was at Billy's house. Rennie asked how the instructor was doing. She was sure that he was lonely, and this was a chance for the girl. At this point, the newcomer decided to take advantage of the moment and asked if the instructor wanted to pass something on to his former boss. But in return, Tyler wants to get some products. It's fair trade. The player has received a quest in which they need to deliver Rennie's wishes to instructor Billy. The NPS was about to leave, but Lee asked the girl to linger because he intended to cook a delicious dish. This time he intends to cook fried rice with egg and soy sauce. The protagonist is very familiar with how to cook it. Finally, the guy has a secret ingredient, which is a delicious egg from the golden hen he got earlier. The bird suddenly popped out of the player's inventory, laid an egg, and jumped back in. Tyler was insanely passionate about cooking. He felt inspired every time he made a new dish. At first, the player interfered with his right hand, then with his left hand. It looks unrealistically tasty. The character takes a spoonful, and as soon as the food enters his mouth, he completely fills it with his fragrant and slightly salty taste. The newcomers once again rude to the NPS, demanding their reward for completing the first task. Then Tyler appeared. Billy was surprised. He did not expect to see his friend. Lee replied that he missed the instructor and came to see him. As usual, the player spoke nicely, but then the newcomer admitted that the instructor Rennie asked to pass on the message to the NPS. The girl handed over the roses with a small note in which Rennie indicated that the message was from her. Well, that's just the style of a former subordinate, and it made Billy smile. It wasn't that long ago Rennie was subordinate to Commander Billy. Then she was arrogant. The world called her a genius, and over time her confidence only grew, after which the girl got into a situation in which she almost died. Commander Billy saved the girl, that's right. It was from that moment that you can say that the girl fell in love with the commander. Soon after, all Rennie had to do was come here and admire the former commander from afar. But now, Tyler returned. Rennie was looking forward to the player. She asked what the commander had said. Lee relayed the words of gratitude to Billy. The instructor was lost in her thoughts for a moment, thinking about the commander, when suddenly she became thoughtful. And why did Tyler come so late? So Lee began to make excuses that he had been making Billy goodies before coming back, as he was embarrassed to just give the message and leave. A notification popped up that Tyler could no longer eat and would be able to eat again after his satiety level dropped to 0%. If the satiety level drops to 0, it will drop from 7 to 6, and it will take 24 hours for the level to drop. The protagonist desperately tried to consume food, but every time notifications popped up, the guy was no longer able to consume food. Lee felt as if his mouth had gone out, so the guy decided to test his digestion skills. Maybe it would give something. In reality, the character ate tasteless food and exercised for 4 hours a day. In the game, the newcomer feels light. He no longer has that heavy body in which it is difficult to breathe, so he can do what he wants. Lee caught Rennie's attention. She looked at the player and tried to figure out why he was doing the quest exercises. The newcomers around began to whisper. They did not understand why the main character was doing the exercises if it was possible to catch chickens and level up. Tyler's eyes were serious, not like the others, as if he had decided on something important to him. The character is desperately hungry. The player was doing exercises. It was at this point that he felt endlessly hungry. After 4 hours, the protagonist has used up all the calories. His satiety level has dropped to 0%. Now Lee can consume food again. Finally, the guy can have a snack. He couldn't think of anything but food right now. While Tyler was cooking, he was approached by Rennie, who received an offer from the NPS to learn the art of swordsmanship from her. Lee can now return to the rookie hunting grounds and the village, and Lee has gained 3 renown. If the protagonist accepts the offer, then a quest will be formed. The instructor was embarrassed, as if she wanted to find a reason to detain the player in the village. When the instructor watched Tyler yesterday while he practiced with the sword, she noticed that the rookie looked lonely. As Rennie watched the player, she realized that he was not vain or braggarty. Lee knew how to move properly. The protagonist has been thinking for too long, which angered the NPS. Many players want to learn from her, and Tyler is also thinking about it. The newcomer asked if it would be hard. Rennie replied that the guy would beg for mercy. Hearing this, Lee agreed. It was the first time the instructor had seen a person who loves challenges so much she admired it. The player's level of training was 0. As expected, there were pleas for a little rest, but Rennie begged for mercy. She was not ready to train with the newcomer for 2 hours without a break. This guy is a monster. He doesn't waste a single move. Besides, he absorbs everything like a sponge. Tyler told Billy that Rennie had started teaching him the art of swordsmanship. This time the girl again handed over the rose, but this time with a letter in which she confessed her love to the former commander. Billy smiled as he read the letter, remembering the self-assured girl who had fallen head over heels in love with him. After the instructor read the letter, Tyler was about to leave. NPS finally decided to ask. Billy asked if the guy had reached his goal. The player replied that no, he hadn't eaten chicken yet. When Tyler came back, he began training again, Rennie demanding that the newcomer increase his speed. It took the protagonist a week to learn the art of swordsmanship 100%. He did it much faster than many players. After completing their training, Rennie and Tyler traveled to the village of Urbis to eat a great fried chicken. The guy was uncontrollably putting chicken in the basket. The instructor was outraged by such a large amount. Now that the Sims have finished buying the necessary groceries, Lee's gaze has become more serious than in training. Rennie took the protagonist to a cherished place where food is for all people. Young or old, they call it the divine chicken. Eating both cheeks along with beer, called chimek, fried chicken is amazing, no matter how much time Tyler spends looking at it. The protagonist immediately started cooking. He sang a cheerful song under his breath and was absolutely happy. The instructor decided to step away for a while and come back. She warned the guy about her departure. As promised, the girl soon returned. She bought Lee a gift of delicious bread. During the absence of NPS, the character roasted all 150 chickens during this time. Rennie reacted in the same way as instructor Billy. It turns out that people who love each other are quite similar. Tyler took care of his friend and brought him some chicken. The smell is really good. Billy noted that the guy is really amazing in many ways. However, the character came for a reason. He brought a message from Rennie this time as well. The instructor looked at the letter contentedly. He liked this game of lovers. On the paper, the girl wrote that she was glad to share dinner with the captain, at least in this way. The NPS thought it was time for him to send something back to his former subordinate. The protagonist set a small improvised table in the clearing in anticipation of a delicious dinner. After opening the can of beer drink, Lee began to catch the foam that began to leave the can. There were too many gases in the drink. They hit the guy in the nose. And now it's time to eat the fried chicken. Tyler has waited too long for this moment. How little is needed to be happy? Just the ability to eat any food you want. The player once consumed all the calories and his satiety level dropped to 0%. He received a secret quest. The digestive ability has been taken to a new level. Now calories are consumed twice as fast. Tyler brought Rennie a message from Billy, and Rennie was happy to receive a note from the captain. The instructor was confused. Could it be that Billy felt something about her too? The NPS rewarded the player with Sylphian leather armor, so he received 4 Rennie points, while Rennie was pinned a bow to his hair. This item is only for those who have mastered the art of swordsmanship. This armor is prescribed by the power of the Sylphs, who occasionally visit Rennie. The god of Asanta assigns player Tyler Lee 2 quests. The first is to find a berserker in the village of Urbis and kill the monster she tells about. The second quest is to conquer the Twilight Graveyard nearby. However, the protagonist can only choose one of the quests. Lee thought the girl had brought something delicious. Rennie reprimanded the player. Because he received legendary quests, the guy immediately corrected himself and shed a tear. The instructor asked me not to make a fool of her, but she thought that Tyler was an interesting person. NPS also believes that when choosing between the 2 quests, the capabilities of the Twilight Graveyard have more to do with what Lee has been striving for all along. Rennie recommended that the player go to the village of Urbis and find a peasant named Izan. The main character asked again. Then the instructor explained that the peasant would give the guy a delicious yangang. Hearing this, the player hurried to complete the quest. He went to look for Izan. The rookie's behavior made the NPS laugh. Obito couldn't believe that his client had received a quest for the legendary class. Others can't get a legendary class quest, even if that's the only thing they're aiming for. As a rule, high-class players get such a quest. It is such a rare thing that there are those who only save up for it. Tyler wasn't even trying. He was just doing what made him happy, which was trying to eat as much as possible. The protagonist is literally the one who is in the game literally only for food, but despite this, he successfully manages to get items and quests from NPS. Sanchez wondered if the client was going to do this legendary quest, but Tyler had no intention of doing it. The coach was horrified by this answer. He couldn't believe that the guy didn't care that it would make the whole game easy. The protagonist replied that while he was completing the quest, he would not be able to eat well, and it was he who got the legendary quest. Lee told Obito that if he met the old man, the NPS would give the guy a yangang. Sanchez arranged to meet with the client in the village of Urbis. Tyler said that he had lost weight in the game. The coach was interested in how the guy looked now. If a person loses 100 kilograms, how much will it change? Obito contacted Lee and asked where he was. The character was in the main square, but the trainer did not see him. Then a stranger collided with Sanchen's shoulder. It was Tyler. Obito noted that the guy was very handsome, with a graceful bridge of his nose and sparkling doe eyes. The well-proportioned figure is also magnificent. The coach still didn't recognize his client. It wasn't until Lee greeted the general that Sanchez recognized him as a heavyweight. Obito was shocked if the guy was allowed to change his face in the game, but in Asant, you can't change facial features. The coach admired the beauty of the main character. Tyler was embarrassed by such a reaction of the coach, which in real life is hidden behind tens of kilograms of fat. The character was embarrassed by Sanchez's reaction. Tyler was not used to hearing compliments about his appearance. Only the father told the hero that Williams was never ashamed of his son. Lee Sr. wanted Tyler to know that he was his father's greatest pride. The protagonist, in turn, wanted to become the son that his father would be proud of. If Lee gets rid of the weight, he will be able to become a son that his father will be proud of. This is what the guy has dreamed of all his life. Obito asked how he could help the client. His things are not bad. Then the coach offered 2 million gold to start with. He's still a rookie, so Tyler won't need too much. General sent a request to the player to send money. However, Lee decided that he shouldn't agree. It would be too easy. The character is confident that he will be able to earn money for his own food. Sanchez couldn't believe it. The customer really wouldn't take the money. With 2 million, the guy would be able to buy anything he wanted. The player reiterated that this is why he can't take money from the coach, as Lee knows how important food is to him. For some, it may be a normal, everyday meal that they take for granted. But for young children, it's what they've so desperately desired. And for others, this complete, inexpensive dish may not mean so much. Or maybe they were saving for a luxurious meal for a person they respect and care about. For some people, food is commonplace, but for others, it may be completely out of reach. The protagonist doesn't want to eat as much as he wants just because he has a lot of money. He really wants to make sure that he can earn money for food with his own hands. If you think about it, Tyler has always been like this. No matter what he did, he always tried his best. Obito was moved by the customer's speech. He began to fool around and said that Lee was the most amazing person. At this point, the protagonist suddenly became serious and said that he was in a hurry. He already had to go. At first, the coach did not understand such a hurry, but the guy explained that he was waiting for a young gang. At the same moment, Tyler ran off on his own business, leaving the general alone in the square. The guy had indeed left. His legs were like lightning. Lee had just been here, and a second later, he had disappeared into the crowd. When the protagonist's granny was alive, she saved up Yongang for a while to feed baby Lee, the sweetness of red gummies. He could feel the dessert melting in his mouth. While the player was looking for Azan and asking other characters how to find this NPS, I heard a lot of feedback about the man. Some hated him, some praised him. Finally, the newcomer found Izan. The old man was sure that the player wanted to ask for directions. Lee replied in the negative. The old man then thought that Tyler had come to find a secret quest or something, but the character said he wanted to try the Yangang. Well, the newcomer has made the right choice. Nowadays, young people are not looking for such food. The player was surprised by the amount of dessert. Did Izan really do it himself? The old man offered a sample of Yangang to Lee. After slowly chewing on one piece of the sample, Tyler was delighted. The marmalade was insanely delicious. By his actions, the protagonist increased intimacy with Izan. The guy really enjoyed the dessert. The player asked how much one copy cost. The price was 1,000 gold. Then the newcomer bought 20,000 desserts. After that, the old man asked the guy for help. You need to go to the Twilight Graveyard and defeat the boss of the Shadowlands, the Golden Pig. There is a restriction. Only players of the 10th level can enter. The newcomer was happy to help Izan. To begin with, Tyler had to collect 50 chestnuts and bring them to the old man. Lee immediately set off to complete the quest. As soon as he heard about the pig boss, he couldn't think of anything but snacking on pork. A strange noise was heard from the depths of the forest, which attracted the attention of the protagonist. Today, the rating of the best players was presented. Eileen is recognized as a goddess. Since you cannot change facial features in the game, the beauty of the girl was transferred to her character. Now, this is the most discussed topic. The girl sat on the couch and wondered if the players really thought that her beauty was born. She was able to achieve it only through a myriad of efforts and time. 12th place in the national ranking, the Lightning Witch Eileen. Her incredible beauty amazes most players. Along with her excellent skills, she has earned a place at the top of the rankings. People even once said that the girl had godlike control until she was defeated by an unofficial rank player. It was then that Eileen realized that she was weak, too weak in close combat, and the witch needs to practice more and become stronger than she is now. The girl decided to go back to the very beginning. She created a new character. Bernadette had heard that chestnut beasts, which are so difficult for beginners to hunt, live in the vicinity of this village. In Ascent, you can't create a new character in your account, but during the closed beta test, the girl reached the maximum level. Therefore, the developers allowed Eileen and only her to create a new character. Also, the player asked the moderators to change her face, so she easily got rid of the chasing crowd due to popularity. They promised Bernadette that it would be difficult, but so far it has been easy for the gamer here. There are so many monsters in this place that the level rises quite quickly. Suddenly, Eileen found a large chestnut tree in the bushes, a finding that surprised her. But Bernadette quickly suspected something was amiss. It couldn't be a chestnut. It was the Chestnut King. He doesn't appear often. I wonder why he appeared now. The difference was 11 levels. It was wiser to just escape. But it was too easy. The gamer decided to challenge herself. After all, Eileen started all over again to grow up. What's the point of running then? The monster turned out to have a lot of health. The girl could not continue in the same vein. She needed distance. However, something happened. The Chestnut King began to behave differently. After getting a bump on his head, he got angry, strained, and shot his spikes. Such a sudden attack knocked Eileen off her feet. The gamer fell to the ground. Bernadette's health dropped below 20%, and the monster swung to finish off her opponent. The girl was about to be defeated when Tyler repelled the Chestnut King's attack. Lee apologized to Eileen, after which the boy asked if he could take the chestnut. Bernadette was surprised at the stranger's request. She did not even understand what kind of chestnut he was talking about. Lee pointed at the king's head. This was the thing the guy wanted. Eileen was amazed that the stranger had killed the monster in one hit. The gamer said that Tyler can take the rest of the items. They are quite rare. Such an offer caused Lee bewilderment because he already took the chestnut. Eileen revealed that she could not use these items. The protagonist thanked the good-natured girl. The player couldn't figure out where the guy got such strength from. Not that his skills were so special that they could be equated to a legendary class. He can have a powerful artifact, but kill the Chestnut King in just one hit. After a while, most of Bernadette's health has been restored, and she can now return to slaying beasts. While the gamer was looking for monsters while wandering through the forest, she heard familiar sounds. The girl walked towards the noise and bumped into her savior. Lee was training at the time. The stranger's actions left Eileen stunned, and he chose a very ineffective way to increase his stats. Does the guy really think it helps, even if his stats don't go up? Maybe training in the game helps to improve combat skills in reality? This would explain the player's behavior, which is why he is so strong even at a low level. Tyler's next actions caused even more bewilderment to Bernadette. Lee was cooking chestnut chicken duck Doriton. The girl didn't see anyone cooking in the game. A magnificent aroma filled everything around her. The sight made Eileen's mouth water. In any case, the stranger cooks well. It looks very appetizing. The girl remembered that in reality, she had only eaten cherry tomatoes with soda that day. Bernadette couldn't resist any longer. The smell was too fragrant, and the pleasure with which the player ate left Eileen no choice. The gamer ran out of her hiding place and asked if she could try the duck Doriton for a while. Tyler recognized the kind stranger who gave him all the items, and he happily gave her a treat. Eileen was happy with this opportunity. She had never been interested in food at Asanta before. The seasoning combined with the sweetness of the chestnut gives both a sweet and tangy taste. The chicken is cooked perfectly, not tough but soft and tender. The texture of chestnut is reminiscent of potatoes, which goes well with spicy chicken broth. The girl wanted to continue eating more and more. She could not tear herself away from the dish even for a second. The main character noticed the good appetite of the stranger. None of the guy's acquaintances had ever eaten with such pleasure. After finishing the last pieces, Eileen admitted that she had been following the player for a long time. She asked if the newcomer was training to become stronger. Tyler admitted that he only does this to digest what he's already eaten so that he can eat even more yummy things later. Then the gamer decided to offer something to the newcomer. She said that she was called the Lightning Witch. The girl asked if the guy wanted to join the Asterian Guild. Instead of responding to the suggestion, the protagonist said that the rice was ready. Eileen was stunned. Tyler did not react to the news that a famous ranker was sitting in front of him. However, the protagonist's thoughts were only a delicious lunch. Bernadette also could no longer think of anything but Doc Doriton with freshly cooked rice. The guy started eating again. It didn't look like he had heard the witch at all. Maybe he wasn't interested. Eileen quickly realized that the player was not interested in anything but food, and she gave them the chance to join a guild of their dreams. The character then asked the girl if the game would only be fun if the player joined a guild. Such a question unsettled the girl. She did not expect to receive such words head-on. Tyler continued, "This game, like everything else, is aimed at development, reaching a high level and getting good equipment, all for the sake of everyone's admiration." Lee isn't sure if that's the only way to enjoy the game. He only has one reason to play, and that's where he can enjoy the food. The game is something that should be fun. The guy was right. Bernadette asked for forgiveness. After an awkward pause, the gamer asked if the main character wanted to add her as a friend. The player thought about it, and then Eileen decided to bribe her new acquaintance with food. The character immediately changed his mind. He offered to immediately add each other as friends. The girl asked Lee to slow down. She would only be able to add him when she came from the main character. The protagonist decided to warn Eileen that at the beginning of the game, he could eat more than 100 portions at a time, so treating a friend could cost the heroine a fortune. After that, Bernadette thanked the guy for lunch, and the players went about their business. After an amazing acquaintance, the gamer thought for a long time about one simple and obvious idea that Lee voiced. Now she will play the way she wants. It was the first time so many chestnuts had been brought to the old man, let alone a royal delicacy. Now Aizan can make a special chestnut yangang. The protagonist was about to go to the Twilight Graveyard as he had reached level 10. The NPS asked the player to take their time as the old man decided to treat the guest. It turns out that Eileen was not cheating. The guy really received a request for a friend supplement. Tyler was sure that the girl was lying, since you can't create an additional character in Ascent. In any case, Lee has no intention of joining her guild, the player remembering to add the general as a friend. The old man offered dessert to the guy while he waited for the special Yang Gang. The general was pleased that the customer had added him as a friend. The coach asked what Tyler was going to do now, and the player said that he wanted to go to the Twilight Graveyard. After Lee told about the plans for the boss pig, which terrified Obito, the guy was going to eat the monster. But there are butchers in this world. Then the hero replied that when you cook yourself, the taste is completely different. The character ended the conversation with Sanchez and immediately went to the market, where he approached the girl who was buying and selling. Tyler said that he would like to sell some items. The girl was amazed by the beauty of the guy. When she came to her senses, the saleswoman asked to put the goods for sale on the scales. Since the protagonist was selling chicken feathers, the girl concluded that the customer was now on the 6th level. The scales showed the exorbitant weight of the goods. The saleswoman even thought at first that the device was broken. However, the player was still putting feathers on the scales. Seeing such a huge volume, the girl was shocked. There was only one question in the stranger's head. Why did the handsome man kill so many chickens? These are low-level animals. Even if you sort through them in such numbers, you won't get much experience. Tyler has been nicknamed the Chicken Hunter, the one who kills chickens and cooks them right away, but he's really handsome. Finally, the client finished laying out the feathers. The scales showed unrealistic numbers. It is hard to imagine how many chickens he killed. The protagonist believed that he had eaten about 700 chickens, but judging by the feathers, there were not even 500. The girl was completely bewildered, hearing the steam's musings. She could not believe what the player was cooking and eating outside. Fascinated by feathers, Tyler completely forgot about other items that would be nice to sell. He offered the girl the beak of a golden chicken and the improved sting of the Chestnut King. The gamer has completely ceased to understand what is happening. The player looks like a beginner, but what has he been doing all this time? So 582 chicken feathers are worth 60,300 gold. 45 stingers are 15,000 gold. The beak of a golden chicken is 500,000, and the sting of a Chestnut King is 100,000, making a total of 675,300 gold. The main character was pleasantly surprised by such a high price. The girl asked to wait. Tyler successfully sold items worth over 600,000 gold, making his first trade. The guy got the title of the one who showed patience before the sale. The saleswoman was delighted. It was the first time someone had received a title in her store. She considered it a good achievement for a guy. She asked if the player wanted to buy some good gear from her with the money, but Tyler had other plans. The main character is going to the Twilight Cemetery, where an appetizing piglet is waiting for him. In order to properly cook pork, you need to buy a lot of additional things. The saleswoman asked where the player was going to recruit the group. Lee didn't know that the Twilight Cemetery needed a team. The gamer quickly guessed that the client was going to the dungeon for the first time. Unfortunately, when the character goes to the Twilight Graveyard for the first time, he needs a squad. Tyler immediately drooped. The girl asked the player not to worry so much, as he could go to the central square and quickly find a group there. The very fact that the character would have to play in a group made him depressed. The saleswoman tried to support the client as best she could. The protagonist was sitting on a bench in the central square, thinking that no one but him wanted to taste the delicious pork, since he would have to share the loot and vegetables. Lee decided to put all the vegetables in his inventory for now, as such a large number could attract attention. Suddenly, someone shouted that there was only one place left on the team to go to the Twilight Graveyard. The character immediately went to the voice and met a guy who was looking for a member to join the squad. The stranger asked what class the player wanting to join had. Tyler admitted that he was only the 10th. The guy noticed that the one who wanted to do it was the first time he was going to complete the hunting quest. After thinking for a while, the unknown person replied that everything was fine. He often took people on such tasks. He would invite Lee to the group. The commander decided to introduce the newcomer to the team, Brennan Brooks, a 13th level mage. Tyler introduced himself. He named his level, and he was embarrassed as he didn't have a class yet. One of the participants called out to the commander. It seemed to the guy that the newcomer's level was too low. In addition, it does not have a class. This task can be too dangerous for the player. However, the leader reassured his comrade. He said that he often sees people in the Twilight Cemetery, so there should be no problem. Even if something went wrong, Dayon Carey would take care of his squad. These words reassured the participant. The team was standing in front of the entrance to the dungeon of the Twilight Graveyard. When they went a little further, monsters would appear. The squad has entered the Twilight Graveyard. They will only be able to leave the dungeon when they clear it. If the squad escapes, the commander will receive a penalty. The young magician noticed that his companion was already eating the 10th castella, a traditional Japanese sponge cake. The boy couldn't resist asking the player if he was really that hungry. Tyler said that there was a castella because it was delicious, an answer that baffled the mage. The dessert is reminiscent of sweet bread, and when you dip it in milk, you get an unforgettable taste. Instead of eating the castella whole, the player advises pouring a mug of milk and enjoying each bite by dipping it in the milk. Brennan imagined exactly as Tyler described. He literally felt that delicate taste in his mouth. The mage couldn't resist asking his friend to try a piece, but Lee refused. The commander interrupted the awkward conversation, directing the squad in the right direction. The first monster appeared in front of the players. It is a small ant. It can extend its legs and catch people to squeeze them to death. The protagonist only thought that if he caught all the ants, he would be able to get to the piglet. These monsters are stronger than they seem, so you have to be careful. The commander said he would stand in the middle and attract the attention of the ants. The commander ordered Roland and Code to stand on either side, with Brooks helping as much as possible. The leader confidently and easily coped with opponents, killing them with one blow. Brennan also used fire magic to keep up with the team and deal with the ants. While the leader wasn't lying when he said he was a good player, he replied that he had already gone through this quest several times. Lewis noted that Tyler's equipment is quite good. For a beginner, it is a rare thing. The protagonist noticed the captain's spear. He was sure that there was already a video of him somewhere. The boy's stamina was already running out. He needed time to recover. At one point, Brennan saw an ant and became frightened. The monster was heading towards him. The boy cowered in fear, but suddenly, one of his comrades in arms shielded him from the monster's attack. It was Tyler who, seeing that Brooks was in trouble, dropped what he was doing and came to the rescue. The mage noticed something was wrong. The commander promised that he would lead the squad, but the monsters continued to attack the participants. Lewis's excuse was that Lee was loitering around and making it difficult for the captain to concentrate. Brennan does a good job, but the leader is annoyed by his friends chomping. At first, Lewis didn't mind, but Tyler continues to eat the entire time the squad is in the dungeon and hasn't done anything worthwhile. After that, the commander asked the main character what he was eating. Lewis's nerves gave way and he knocked the food out of Lee's hands with a careless blow. Tyler was taken aback by the leader's brazen behavior, and his precious Castella was on the ground. Lewis started screaming. After all, he ordered his subordinate to stop stuffing bread into his mouth, but the protagonist did not hesitate to hit the captain for such disgusting behavior. The exasperated leader clearly did not expect such audacity from a low-level newcomer. Tyler's single punch blew half of Lewis's health. Brennan was terrified of that power. The captain wanted to yell at his subordinate for his unacceptable behavior, but Lee's eyes burned with rage. The protagonist looked scary, with a dark energy emanating from him that frightened everyone present. After that, the subordinate said that spoiling food is not good. This lesson Lewis will remember for a long time. The captain wondered if Tyler was worried too much about an ordinary piece of bread. The commander threatened that he would no longer treat the guy like a rookie. Lee didn't look like him anyway. Sweet snakes will soon appear. They are stronger than ants, so Lewis will deal damage to them from afar. However, the captain asked the squad to wait for the player. He was going to lure out the monsters and then attack them. It's been too long since Lewis left. Brennan is starting to worry. The young mage wrote a message to the captain, asking where he had gone. The commander ran out of the darkness in panic. He reported that a large, sweet serpent had appeared. The young mage panicked, and Tyler calmly watched what was happening. Lewis admitted that there were too many monsters around, and he accidentally made everyone angry, so he had to run. Suddenly, the captain tried to attack the protagonist, but Lee calmly blocked the blow with his sword. Tyler made it clear to the boy that he should not get involved in this showdown between the players. Lewis realized that the newcomer knew everything, but Brennan didn't understand what was going on. Brooks asked why the captain attacked Tyler. The character explained that their commander is one of those who kills other players. Lewis wondered how the guy had figured it out, and the newcomer pointed to the spear. Recently in the square, the protagonist saw a player who showed his friend this spear in the square. Unique artifacts exist only in a single copy. And since the weapon is now in the hands of the commander, which means that he stole it, Lewis assembles a team of players with good equipment to steal them later. The rookie turned out to be too smart for someone who does nothing but chew bread. The commander has to take care of a mage who is useless in battle and a guy without class. Lewis was sure that level 10 would not be able to repel the captain's attack, so the player planned to get rid of the perpetual chewer in one hit. It wasn't that simple. Tyler just shrugged it off as if it was the weakest attack of his life. However, the protagonist easily coped with the dishonest player and disarmed him. The young magus was worried about his comrade and asked how he felt. Lee replied that everything was fine. At first, the boy was upset. He did not know what to do without the commander. However, Tyler had grandiose plans for dinner and a piglet. Continuing on their way, the players met a snake. The main character easily coped with it and was about to snack on an apple. Brennan shouted that the apple was poison. The character took a fruit. This apple is really poisonous. It takes away experience points. It cannot even be sold in the store. However, Tyler was not frightened by this. He, without thinking twice, took a bite, which caused indignation in the boy. The apple was the freshest. With each bite, the sweet juice fills the mouth, not to mention how crunchy it is. The main character could not even imagine how delicious it would be if you made jam from it and spread it on toast. The guy ate a poison apple and his experience decreased by 5%. The apple was worth 5%. Brennan was confused. He hoped that Lee wouldn't continue to eat these fruits. The mage was trying to justify his comrade after all. It was his first time here. However, the protagonist was determined to eat plenty of delicious apples. Brooks watched as the player killed one snake after another and devoured the poison food. The young mage tried to understand why he continued to eat apples if they didn't take away his experience. Tyler then asked if Brennan had ever eaten 5,000 cherry tomatoes a day. The boy didn't understand what he was talking about. The character went on to say that if Brooks tried, he would end up like Lee. The guys continued on their way and went in search of the piglet, which the hero dreamed of so much. Finally, the players came to the boss's door, Tyler anticipating how he would enjoy his dinner. Behind the doors, the characters were greeted by the Golden Pig, a special boss who occasionally appears in the Twilight Graveyard. Brennan had heard that the rewards for defeating a boss were better than for normal bosses. Tyler was only thinking about one thing. The thought made him salivate. Brooks felt uncomfortable around such a strange, food-addicted player. The main character rushed into battle. He was not afraid of the boss. He was confident in his victory. The young mage asked Lee to be careful. No matter how strange he was, Brennan was worried about his comrade. However, Tyler was distracted and let his guard down. The golden pig took advantage of the moment. The character did not get confused and activated a critical strike, and then plunged the sword into the monster. In a matter of minutes, the main character defeated the boss. The fight was easy, even boring in places. Lee was outraged. He was told that the pig was stronger, but it was not difficult at all. After completing the divine quest, Tyler became the god of food. From this point on, the experience to level up is tripled. The character has gained many new skills related to food and improved his class. It used to be difficult to pluck chickens himself. Now he has the skill to do it in seconds. Now the guy's stats are increased by what he eats. It's too good. The young Magus was fascinated by the objects that fell out of the golden pig. Tyler allowed the boy to take all the items for himself. He deserved them. Since the player loves bread so much, Brennan told his friend about solar wheat, a special product from the village of Urbis. It is said that bread made from sunny wheat is many times tastier than from ordinary wheat. The Bori Plains is the only place where this wheat grows, but now it is inhabited by goblins, so wheat is not grown and cannot be harvested. Therefore, the village of Urbis asked for help from the players to create a hunting group and clear the plains, and the reward for successful hunting and clearing a plain with sunny wheat. But since the reward is not particularly good, most players abandon the quest. The boy wants to thank Tyler. It was only thanks to him that Brooks completed the quest so easily. After saying goodbye, Brennan left the dungeon, the group disbanded, and now it's time to start cooking. The protagonist used the skill of gathering ingredients. This skill works just amazingly. Tyler was happy. He hadn't eaten pork in years, and now he can do it with peace of mind. The guy was grilling bacon. The sound of greasy meat squealing on the fire was music to his ears. After thorough frying, the protagonist decided to cut bacon into pieces. After that, he dipped the pieces in sesame oil with salty seasoning. It was an explosion of taste buds. The player was happy that in this game, you don't have to think about calories. Tyler alternated pieces of bacon with different snacks. He used lettuce, tomatoes, ginger. The true value of the food was activated, and the protagonist received an increase in strength and health. The stats were indeed increased. A good combination of different ingredients is important for a meal, so a fantastic combination is one of the effects of the true value of the food. A character's stats do not increase due to the fact that he eats a lot. It depends on other factors that are not yet known. Now Tyler was carried away to experiment, wondering what would happen if he ate the worst possible combination. Maybe his stats would go down. Players who wanted to join the group would gather in the camp, after which the man would ask people what they specialized in. Some were good archers, some were spearmen, and when it was Lee's turn, he said he was a good eater. The man thought he had misheard. Tyler replied that he was not a picky eater and could eat many different dishes. A villager called the guy a stranger who ate well, after which he announced that the squad would leave in the afternoon. The man wasn't going to send the players on an empty stomach, which Tyler liked. The other players weren't so excited about the idea. They wanted to go on a mission right now, and they were sure that the soldiers' food didn't taste good. The main character promised to bring the man his portion so that he would not stand in line. Tyler wondered what kind of lunch awaited him. He peeked out from the crowd. Finally, he was our menu. Players were given hamburgers before the start of the quest, or ordered 2 portions. The character was pleased. He carried a fluffy bun and a fresh salad on a tray. There was even cheese inside the burger. Lee sat down at the table with the man and gave him 1 portion. They wished each other bon appetit. Tyler eagerly took a bite of a hamburger, a sesame seed bun, a soft yet crispy lettuce leaf, and a fresh slice of tomato along with a thick and juicy patty. Hot golden brown fries, flexible and fluffy, are dipped in ketchup for the perfect combination of sweet and sour. And if you're thirsty, there's a refreshing cola that fills your mouth with bubbles. Tyler's stats increased again. Then the guy asked if he could register as a military chef. The man took the player to the kitchen. He asked Brian to help Lee join the military chefs. The cook replied that the lineup was already full, but the man asked to find Tyler some work for him. Brian wasn't happy if Captain Singer found out. The man had already run away, leaving the guy to the cook. This conversation interested someone else. A player came into the kitchen and asked if the guy really wanted to become a chef so much. It was Captain Singer, and Lee confessed that he dreamed of becoming a military cook. The commander replied that there were no vacancies and recommended the persistent guy to look for a job elsewhere. The protagonist was sure that this was exactly the job he wanted to do. Cooking skill boosts don't last long, and aren't as effective as those inflicted by the priest, and outsiders are always looking to level up as quickly as possible. After talking for a while, Singer realized that Lee had come to apply for a job, hoping for more meals. Tyler corrected the captain. He wanted to learn how to cook better and, on occasion, pick up free leftovers. In this case, the man gave the player the task of peeling all this garlic in 20 minutes. If the candidate succeeds, then Singer will not only hire the guy, but will also personally train him. However, if the player thinks that he will not be able to cope, then it is better for him to leave immediately than it is worth going to kill the goblins. Before the captain could finish speaking, Tyler used his ingredient gathering skill, completing the task in a couple of seconds. Singer was furious that Lee had dared to lie to his face. But the guy wasn't lying. He cleaned almost an entire bag in an instant. The captain couldn't believe his eyes. The newcomer had unbelievably coped with the task with the help of a special skill. Tyler waited for the next task. As Singer promised to train the player, a quest to gain a cooking skill was formed. The training began with the skill of slicing. The chef explained to the newcomer how to hold the knife correctly. One of the reasons why it is common to cut food this way is that it keeps the ingredients fresher for longer. The guy's eyes are full of interest. He looks like a student who is delighted with his studies. It seems that the player did not lie that he wants to learn how to cook. He is genuinely interested in this venture. Singer asked him to memorize everything he had taught the newcomer today, and now the captain had to go cook dinner. The chief left the apprentice a bit of a bad radishes. Tyler would need to hone his slicing skills on it, but the captain forbade the guy to use third-party skills. In addition, if there are any ingredients left in the vault, Lee can eat them. It would take the rest of the day to cut it all together. If you didn't rest, many gave up halfway. A man called out to Singer on the street. He had heard that the captain had hired a new employee. This is quite unusual for a chief. He doesn't like strangers. The captain had no choice, he promised. Finally, the man asked what would be for dinner tonight. The chef replied that he was cooking tonkatsu. The man said goodbye and went about his business. A few hours later, Singer decided to test the apprentice, during which time he had to cut half a radish. Entering the kitchen, the chef heard a familiar sound. What the man saw next confused him. Could it be that the guy had cut it all himself, without Barney's help? Lee said that there were very few radishes left. His cooking skill had reached its peak, and Tyler hadn't even noticed when it had happened. The chief was surprised that the apprentice had been cutting radishes all this time, if his hand was not tired. The character replied that he could still keep working. He seemed to be starting to succeed. Singer had never met a student like that. This guy had really been learning all this time. His slicing skill had improved greatly after all. All of Lee's words were not just words. The captain admitted that Tyler did a good job today. He achieved amazing results for the first day. It seems that the apprentice is ready to start learning how to roast tonkatsu. First, you need to look at the meat. If there is blood there, then you need to get rid of it. Then you need to season the meat with a little salt and pepper. If you overdo it with salt, the meat will lose its juiciness and spoil. It is important to use the right amount of spices. Peppers add a savory flavor. After that, you need to roll the meat in a small amount of flour, then dip it in an egg and cover with breadcrumbs right before frying. When the breadcrumbs move to the center and begin to float, the meat is done. The result is juicy, tender meat on the inside and crispy breading on the outside. The chef handed the chopsticks to the student. Now it's his turn to fry. First, you need to make sure that the temperature is optimal. Tyler cooks tonkatsu for the first time. He's a little nervous and tries to do everything as Singer said. Lee received a notification that the oil temperature was 157 degrees. He didn't know about such a skill. A new notice said that the oil is at the optimal temperature. Apparently, it started after increasing the cooking skill. The protagonist did not even use a thermometer, which surprised the boss even more. Singer thought about the guy acting like he could feel the temperature. At the right moment, Lee received a notification that the meat was ready. He took out the tonkatsu in perfect readiness. The system asked to choose a buff, an effect, or the true value of food. The player decided to try the first option. Tyler wondered if every dish had a buff effect, and the chef thought he was kidding him, as a chef must have certain criteria and level for a dish to receive a buff. Lee then asked Singer to see the properties of the meat he had cooked. The teacher could not believe what was happening. Tyler decided to test his new skills. Now he can adjust the amount of buff for each cooked dish. saturating the food 100% at once or dividing it into several meals. The quality of the buff effect is replenished daily. A dish that increases stats requires a larger buff. Tyler can also search for ingredients that are needed for certain cooking effects, and the system provides a recipe, but there is a penalty for using the skill. Singer asked which guy got the skill. Lee replied that he got a lot of skills, but none of them improved the taste of the food. The chef decided to cheer up his student. He cooked the tonkatsu so well they must be insanely delicious. The main character was grateful to the mentor for his support. For sure, such a skill will appear a little later. Singer allowed Tyler to eat the tonkatsu he had prepared, and the guy immediately began to cut the cabbage. After the player poured the sauce over the battered meat, he was already choking on saliva with anticipation. Sitting down at the table, Lee thanked the chef for the opportunity to have a delicious snack. As the tonkatsu was cut, there was a melodious crunch and the aroma of pork burst out. The tender patty is shiny, juicy, and fluffy. Tyler made a great dish. At first, the sauce is sweet, but then it becomes salty. In combination with a layer of breadcrumbs, it creates the perfect expressive combination. A crispy layer and a warm, viscous sauce form a harmonious structure, and finally, a dense but tender piece of pork brings everything together. Do not forget about the cabbage that accompanies tonkatsu. It cleanses the taste buds with its freshness, and at the end, you need to fill your mouth with sweet, ripe corn. The protagonist felt absolutely happy. Singer asked to help him prepare food for the soldiers after dinner. When Tyler got to his chair, he lay down on the table. He was very tired. Today was a productive day. Suddenly, the captain appeared, praising his apprentice for the work he had done. Lee was worried about his mentor and offered him something to eat. Singer replied that he was fine. The player did not see the teacher eat during all this time. Then the boss reassured the guy that his meals were accompanied by medications. Singer is the kind of person who tries to achieve new tastes and new experiences. He really tries to make sure that others can enjoy a good meal when they eat the food prepared by the chef. Then the captain confessed that he had never tasted anything in his mouth. The player didn't get sick of anything. That's not the point. He can't even say what it tastes like. The apprentice was interested in how the mentor was able to become a chef. Then Singer admitted that the skill of agility helped him. If a character increases their dexterity by 20, the flavor increases by 1. And thanks to their dexterity, they can cook like a veteran cook. And to reach this level of skill, he must have been training countless times. Later, Singer reached out to Tyler. He realized that the player was having a rough day and suggested that he go rest. The captain got up and, leaving the boy alone, went off on his own business. He still had to dine alone. The protagonist was touched by the story of the chef. He thought about what it was like when you couldn't taste potatoes, probably, like rubber. Lee wondered if his boss had shown him how to cook. He wanted to repay his mentor in kind. The guy activated the skill of finding an ingredient, then chose the category of Chinese food. He was interested in the buff effect. The main character decided to try to return the dead sense of taste for life. Barney urges the chefs on, telling them to watch their hand movements. Tyler was disappointed. It was the third day and the alert still hadn't arrived. Probably it was still impossible. The other cooks fussed. The street was unusually louder than usual. Barney motivated his employees. He assured his subordinates that they should focus on their work. The battles were very serious. The cooks should make sure that the bellies of the players were full. Everything around me began to vibrate. The paintings on the walls began to sway. It became more difficult to keep my balance. Could there really be an earthquake in the game? The protagonist began to worry. And at the most unexpected moment, the very notification that Tyler had been waiting for so long appeared. The cooks began to panic among themselves, shouting that a group of orcs were coming right here, despite the fact that this place was far from the monster village. An ingredient that can restore the deceased's sense of zest for life is the essence of the orc chieftain. The recommended dish is tansuyuk. Lee immediately ran out to meet his new target. Running outside, the protagonist was surprised. The orcs really got to the village. The players bravely fought the monsters, defending their camp. It didn't take long to find the orc chieftain. He was the largest of all his tribesmen and stood out from the crowd. There was panic among some players. They wanted to quit the game en masse, but it is unacceptable to throw all the responsibility on the shoulders of newcomers. Tyler stared at the boss, who was mercilessly throwing players in different directions. The guy got too carried away with his thoughts. He was noticed by one of the orcs and decided to attack the main character. Without distracting himself from his target, Lee slashed his opponent to pieces with a single slash of his sword. The essence of the orc chieftain was vital to the player. He sincerely wanted to thank the chief, which is why the player rushed into battle. The chieftain's sword is heavy, which means he swings it slowly, so when he starts attacking, there will be an opportunity. We didn't have to wait long. The boss apparently likes to swing his sword. However, the guy did not manage to defeat the orc leader so easily. He is one of those who mainly count on strength. Therefore, the enemy is at a disadvantage in front of someone who relies on speed and technique. Seizing the moment again, the player this time was confident of his victory. He aimed at vital points. This time, the chieftain couldn't dodge the blow. His eyes darkened, his body became heavier, and he finally fell to the ground. With his actions, Tyler raised the morale of his comrades. The players rushed to the attack. It seems that the orcs came here after chasing the goblins, but because of this, there are fewer goblins to fight against. The men admired Tyler. If it wasn't for him, the camp would have been in big trouble. Singer recalled the admonitions of his student, who asked him to put on comfortable clothes, take a bath, and wait. The tutor didn't really want to follow the disciples' recommendations, but that was certainly a small part of what he could give Lee. However, the boss did as Tyler asked. The guy was happy to see Singer. Lee immediately asked how much free time the character had. The mentor was confused. The captain offered to get straight to the point. He didn't just come to stand, the main character invited him inside. After being seated at the table, the player brought Singer a dish on a tray that had been prepared especially for him. Lee went on to say that this tansyuk is made from the essence of the orc chief. More specifically, it is in the sauce. The chief quickly guessed that the apprentice had obtained this ingredient on the last expedition. This essence is famous for its effect that can restore the sense of taste. The captain wondered if this was the reason the player had joined the expedition. Tyler tried to joke that he wanted to try tansuyuk as a tall man, but Singer was moved by the student's action. The protagonist served the cherished dish to his mentor, but first you need to add sauce. The chef immediately began to be indignant. If he was going to add sauce, then why was it necessary to fry them? Fried food should be crispy. Lee had a different opinion on this. Tansuyuk should be consumed with sauce, so the top layer would blend harmoniously with the tender meat inside, creating a fantastic taste. The captain didn't understand why it was necessary to fry if the guy was going to soften the crispy texture. Then the player decided to make a night move, pointing out that the chef could not even taste it, had he never tried to pour sauce over the crust. The cook's arguments ended and there was silence, which later gave way to laughter. A pointless argument would be resolved only by tasting the dish. The mentor and the student felt happy. The protagonist put the plate on the table and suggested that Singer be the first to try. The captain didn't really believe that the dish could heal his taste buds. Everything around him ceased to exist. The chef concentrated only on his sensations, a faint, barely noticeable taste on the tip of his tongue. The multi-ingredient sauce slowly adds flavor. The crispy fried top layer doesn't lose its consistency once the sauce is added. Then chewing further, Singer feels the special sweet and sour pork. The tender meat goes well with the sauce. The protagonist's plan worked. The chef got a taste for the first time. It was great. However, the captain was embarrassed. Too soon to be so moved. But that was just the beginning. Then the chef served two more dishes: jjajangmyeon, noodles in black bean sauce, and champong, noodle soup with spicy seafood. Noodle dishes taste better if eaten with wooden sticks. Tyler immediately showed how to use wooden appliances correctly. As expected from the boss, he grasps everything on the fly. The man quickly got used to eating with chopsticks. A combination of well-tested meats and vegetables, sweet sauce and noodles. Singer filled his mouth with shiny black noodles over and over again. And at the end, he should add pickled radish to perfectly combine different flavors. Champong needs to be eaten in a different way. First, the player drinks a spicy broth, then complements it by adding a spicy mixture of vegetables and seafood. And the final chord is delicate noodles. They reveal all the shades of the sauce, dancing lonely to the tingling in the mouth. The captain admitted that it was really a good meal. Tyler asked his mentor not to limit himself, to eat as much as he wanted. Colleagues had a pleasant conversation about food and life. This lunch will be remembered by them for a long time. When they finished, the chefs thanked each other for the pleasant company. The chef noted Tyler's incredible skills. Singer asked the apprentice to wait a while and left the tent. Now that the protagonist has been rewarded with sun wheat, he wonders what he should try first: bread or kalgsa. Kalgsu is a broth with hand-cut noodles. the thought of which excites Tyler. While Lee was flying in the clouds, the mentor returned with a box in his hands. There was clearly something interesting there. The captain was worried and asked the apprentice, for his sake, to accept the gift. The main character was interested in the box. He took it in his hands to inspect it. Inside was a precious gift, any chef's dream, an Emmy kitchen knife. It was a gift for a valuable student. Tyler completed a hidden quest and received a reward for it. The main character was confused. He did not know that this is a quest. The knife increases manual dexterity by 4 times. Singer asked if the student liked the gift. The character was delighted. The uncluttered design adds a twist to the item. The knife has such a characteristic as infinite strength, which means that even if the blade becomes dull, it sharpens itself and there is a possibility of equipping. If you equip your sword and knife, you will get something incredible. The Emmy knife is an artifact type of equipment. Now it is connected to the guy's sword. It can also now transform into any kitchen tool, hammer, and fishing rod when commanded. Tyler was very grateful to Captain Singer for the gift. It will be very useful in the game. Emmy inherited the skills of her father, the former emperor, who later became known as the Empress of Swords. She was elected to rule the nation, and now Emmy is being praised as the best empress in history. Lee was inspired by his teacher. The chief is amazing. He received the sword from the empress. Singer confessed that Emmy was his lover, and the student was surprised by such a revelation. In the past, the mentor was a chef in the palace. The girl really liked the food prepared by Singer. But because the former emperor was suffering from illness, Emmy came to the throne at a young age, which brought her a lot of anxiety. The girl often said that the chef's dishes gave her the energy to move on. However, at the end of the day, he couldn't be with Emmy. After all, he was just a chef with an unremarkable past. Her vassals framed Singer and kicked him out of the palace. But before leaving the palace, the chief made a promise. It was obvious that Emmy would become the new empress after her father left. In order not to tarnish her father's title and position, she told Singer that she would continue to hone her sword skills. And when the girl replaces the previous emperor, the chef promised to cook her an excellent dish. Not long ago, Singer heard a rumor that Emmy had replaced the previous emperor. Tyler was in puppy ecstasy whether his mentor was going to go to the palace. But no, the vassals who threw Singer out of the palace will never let him go back. So the boss wants to ask Lee something. The captain asked if Tyler could meet Emmy in his place and cook her a delicious meal. Not being able to meet his beloved, despite the strength of his desire, he wants to meet her himself more than anything. But the reality is cruel. The protagonist was lying under the covers. He wanted to hide somewhere. He didn't want to show his ugly body to anyone. Everyone was pointing his finger and whispering. Without hesitation, Lee decided to fulfill the boss's request. He would meet with the Empress and show her the cooking skills that the mentor showed the guy. Tyler accepted the quest, and Singer thanked his apprentice for being willing to help. The chief wondered what the player was going to do next, but Lee had heard that the monsters in the area could get sunflower. The protagonist was about to head to the village after catching a couple. Singer wished good luck to his apprentice. On the street, the player met with an old acquaintance. The man asked if the cook was already going to move out. The character gave Tyler a bounty for a previous completed hunt. Lee didn't even know that a bounty was waiting for him. The gamer did not expect to receive so much. The man noticed that Tyler's contribution was too valuable for the camp. In addition, Lee received a key to the dungeon, a special reward for being the first participant in the hunt. Troop morale skyrocketed thanks to the buffs from Tyler's food. They counted this as the player's contribution. Hidden dungeons have twice as much experience as regular dungeons, so if you try, you can level up pretty quickly. The man wanted to give a card, but Lee refused. He needed to do something. The character was at a loss as to what he needed to do besides leveling up. The protagonist admitted that he needed to meet Emmy. The man replied that it was impossible. In real life, Tyler decided to look for a way to complete his assignment from the captain. After reading a lot of articles, Lee stumbled upon a life hack if you approach the Empress and shouted that he was a student of Chief Singer. If Emmy is defeated, the Empress will personally teach the player how to wield a sword. The protagonist was sure that if she mentioned the boss, she would not be able to pass by. Along the way, the player dealt with monsters. The orc called Lee crazy and asked him to stop killing. Tyler finished off the monster, ordering it to shut up. The orc is still weaker than the player. The level of the character has increased. Now the guy has reached level 55. The orc dropped a skill book, which surprised the protagonist. And the effect is not so bad. A notification pops up. The player does not meet the class requirements. He cannot acquire the skill. Can Tyler learn to cook and he can't? The character's dissatisfaction was read on his face. There was nothing to be done. Then it remained to sell the book. Lee was sure that the hidden dungeon gave double experience. After all, the player decided to postpone the quest from the chief. The character was in no hurry to open the dungeon. He was interested in what was waiting behind the door. The keeper of the hidden dungeon, Nichold, decided to rest. He worked hard and it was time to take a breather. On his way back to his cabin, the keeper met Tyler, who had arrived. Nichold thought that another loser had come and did not take the guy seriously. The old man was sure that the player would not have time to do anything, as he would run as fast as he could from here. Losers are like that these days. NPS was sure that Tyler would say something like this was his first time in such a place. And that's exactly what Lee said. But Lee continued that he was glad to see the fields with pumpkin and sweet potatoes. The old man opened his mouth. The NPS cleared his throat and assumed that the guy was an outsider. The protagonist bowed to the old man. Nichold introduced himself and then revealed that he was the keeper. The old man asked if the player understood what kind of dungeon it was. Tyler didn't think long. This is a dungeon where NPS collects sweet potatoes. The main character hit the target. The old man asked if the young man would accept the quest. The player accepted the task without hesitation. The old man could not understand the guy. It was just a quest to assemble potatoes. While harvesting sweet potatoes, the stranger will stumble upon black potatoes. These fruits absorb nutrients from other potatoes, so they must be killed. Tyler wondered if he could eat the sweet potatoes he picked. Nichold smiled and allowed him to eat as many potatoes as he wanted. He liked this player. Inspired by the task, Lee rushed to pick the fruit. The old man shouted after the character not to forget to take the farm equipment, thinking that the guy would not collect much. The guardian allowed himself to keep all the potatoes the player would pick. Tyler began to think about what he could cook with sunny wheat and sweet potatoes. Emmy's knife effect, the sword turned into a harvesting hoe. Lee got down to business. The ground turned out to be too hard, which made the task difficult, and the knowledge of agriculture increased by 1%. However, the knowledge of agriculture increased for an obscenely long time, during which time the character received only 1.32%. Tyler didn't want to give up. He wouldn't give up his sweet potatoes because of it. After more time, the protagonist eventually reached the coveted tuber. All the efforts were not in vain. Lee happily pulled out the plant. The quest will take a long time. People are seeing an unprecedented number of newcomers participating in the tournament. A lot of people gathered on the square, including journalists who wanted to talk to the participants of the tournament. Players asked Jeanette what she thought about it, the younger sister of Colin, who has a rank 3 in Ascent. Miss Jeanette had earned the 30th National Legendary Ghost Warrior class, and she didn't understand where so many reporters had come from. Journalists asked for several methods of achieving success. Jeanette could no longer tolerate annoying people and wanted to speak aggressively towards them. Colin decided to take matters into his own hands and did not allow his sister to speak ill of the reporters. After that, the ranker replied that the world is big and full of strong people, so no one can say what will happen. That was the humble opinion of Mr. Colin. Currently the third highest ranked player, the brother and sister have a great relationship. A girl's skills cannot be compared to those of other players of her level, but becoming vain will not do her any good. The world is not that simple after all. Many variables affect it. The whole night passed. The old man did not hear the signal announcing that the guy had left the dungeon. Nichold thought he hadn't heard the signal in his dream when suddenly he saw a familiar silhouette in the gazebo. The keeper entered the gazebo and asked Tyler what he was doing. The player calmly replied that he was eating potatoes. Afterward, Lee reported that he had harvested all the black potatoes that were in the field. The old man couldn't believe his ears. Could the guy really cope with such a volume of work in just one day? Nichold was sure that Tyler was playing some tricks on him. The player couldn't have picked all the black potatoes so quickly. The protagonist ate the fruit with such pleasure that the old man's mouth watered. The keeper couldn't stand aside. He asked Tyler if he had fried or boiled the potatoes. On receiving the answer that the potatoes were boiled, Nichold asked if he could try it. The guy was not satisfied, but the old man was the owner of the farm. The keeper, looking at all the black sweet potatoes that had been harvested, wondered what had happened to the ordinary vegetable. The protagonist shuddered and crawled under the blanket as he had eaten all the potatoes in the field. The old man was furious that a stranger had dared to destroy all the keeper's work in one night, but he himself had allowed everything the boy had collected to be eaten. Nickel felt sick. All the crops, all the man's long work was destroyed. Tyler, feeling guilty, offered another potato to the keeper. The old man offered the player a reward for completing the task, a double Mahaba ring or just an old seed, but only one can be chosen. Mahaba's double ring has a defensive bonus and the ability to absorb a special attack and return it. Tyler was delighted with the great choice. Nick Cole was sure that the guy would take a double ring. The main character decided to choose a seed, a fruit that will grow from this seed, juicier and tastier than usual. The fruit does not have a special effect and will not give a buff, but it has the very property that interested the player, which is the taste. This is a kind of test. The man has been the keeper of this dungeon for many years. Of course, there were players who completed the quest with pure will, however. When it comes time to claim the reward, they immediately choose the ring. People who are unable to raise the value of one seed do not deserve the true reward right in front of them. Tyler didn't need this ring. This farmer's dungeon, a fruit that would be tastier and juicier than usual, was his true value. Nickel asked the guy if he was honest because the ring was amazing. Even if the special effect is surprising, the ring won't help fill Lee's stomach, of course. He will choose a delicious fruit. The old man is inspired by the player. He is really interested in seeing what kind of fruit will grow from the seed. The level of friendship with NPS has increased. Nicole continued. The player would be guessing which fruit would grow from the seed, as well as what it would taste like. The level of friendship continued to increase. The Guardian said that the guy has the appropriate qualifications and can become a real farmer. After the NPS gave Tyler both the bounties, the seed and the ring, he deserves to own both items. The old man was touched that there was a man who loved farming so much. Tyler has gained a hidden part, achieving the status of someone who possesses the true inclination to become a farmer. He can now grow seeds. A special seed that can only be obtained by those who have the appropriate qualifications and can become a real farmer. Tyler's sleight of hand has been increased, and he will now gain 2x more experience for 1 week. The old man was always wondering what kind of person would want to come here and harvest. What kind of person would want to take a seed that looked useless after completing the quest? Lee is the first outsider with such dedication to farming and genuine hard work. The protagonist replied that the potatoes that the keeper grows are very tasty. The keeper was glad to hear such words. Afterward, the NPS replied that he could only trust Tyler to take one test. Not so long ago, some sweet potato people appeared here who caused some trouble in the field. Nicole asked Lee to get rid of these people. Sweet potato people are mobs that plant black sweet potatoes and suck nutrients from nearby plants to strengthen their bodies. Since the protagonist has collected all the black sweet potatoes in the field, chances are they will crawl out of the ground to attack the guy. Nicole then added that the sweet potato warriors sometimes drop golden sweet potatoes. Upon hearing this, Tyler immediately accepted the quest and went to complete it. The keeper then said that the player would find them if they continued in that direction. They would be in a wide, sprawling field. The sweet potato warriors will come out after Tyler has dealt with enough sweet potato people. The protagonist arrived exactly at his destination and asked the monsters if they were the sweet potato people. Tyler immediately began to destroy the villains who spoiled the precious potatoes. It wasn't long before Lee completed the quest and caught 10 sweet potato people. A character has earned 1 point of willpower. When he achieves a goal with sincere diligence and willpower, his fatigue is reduced by 1 level. Strange noises came from behind. It was the sweet potato warrior climbing out of the ground. The protagonist thought that if he defeated the warrior, then the golden sweet potato would fall out. Lee wondered what he could make with the golden sweet potato. Mix it with sun wheat and make pizza or matang. Or it's better to eat it raw. The guy couldn't think anymore. He just wanted to eat it. Now that Tyler has got a good look at the warrior, he looks pretty appetizing. The protagonist instantly removed almost all of the enemy's health, hoping that he would give him the necessary ingredient. The warrior decided to run away from the strange player. The guy chased the enemy and drooled on him. Tyler hadn't seen such strange behavior from monsters before, so the warrior dug up potatoes. He began to regain his health by eating the sweet earth fruit. In this case, the protagonist decided to cut the opponent before he recovers his health. Lee defeated the sweet potato warrior and obtained a golden root vegetable, a perfect golden sweet potato all the way to the core. The player was curious. The warrior also tasted like a golden sweet potato. Here Lee stopped himself. Even if it looks like a sweet potato, eating the monster isn't good. However, Tyler ate a pig. The main character sliced a vegetable on a cutting board and sang a newly invented sweet potato song under his breath. Tyler wanted to steam the potatoes, but this pan doesn't have a lid. The guy didn't know what to do with the diced potatoes when it suddenly dawned on him. The player has built such a structure, now all that remains is to wait until everything is ready. It looked amazingly delicious. Lee immediately reached out to grab the golden potato. It was incredibly hot, and Tyler had to toss food from one hand to the other. Finally, after cooling to an acceptable temperature, the guy broke the potato in half. It's an amazing sight. The main character took his breath away. Due to the fact that it is hot, when the player opens their mouth to cool a piece, small currents of air enter the area, revealing the flavor. A natural sweetness, not all-consuming like chocolate and not tart like candy, a mouthful of sweet potatoes turns into a whirlpool with potatoes melted in it. And as soon as Tyler starts to feel dry and clogged in his throat, the taste of sweetness begins to soften. He eats it with cold donchi, a Korean dish that is a type of kimchi with a fragrant brine and white radish. It turns out to be cool, soothing to the body. One taste perfectly replaces the other, cooling the mouth that has been heated by the hot potatoes. And now Tyler decided to take care of the ones he cut and fried. Before eating, you need to sprinkle a little sugar, pour over the oligodong, and you get such a warm sweetness that it explodes with each bite and covers the entire upper surface of the mouth. Golden sweet potatoes, this is the best dish. The protagonist could eat it forever. Notification popped up, true value of food, sweet potato warrior skill. Now the player can absorb and move. The activation of the skill of absorbing and moving was successful. The guy was interested in what would come of it. He unlocked the fancy food connoisseur. Lee now has the ability to remove debuffs from dishes made with monster ingredients. Tyler is now immune to poison and can acquire skills by eating a monster, with a 33% chance of acquiring a skill. Now the protagonist understood that's what that phrase about the fact that he did not meet the requirements of the class meant. And why Tyler couldn't use the skill book is that he can only acquire skills through food. That is, by absorbing the skill that the monster possesses, then Lee can acquire the Hellfire or Meteor skills that dragons possess. If this is the case, then the protagonist has decided for himself that he will definitely try dragon meat. The character returned to the keeper. The old man was happy to see the guy. Lee said that he quickly completed the task. Nicold said that it was a good thing. He suggested that Tyler had increased the level of his skill quite well. Now the old man wanted to show how to plant the seed of effort and care. Does this mean that the protagonist will be able to put him in jail right away? Lee's eyes lit up. Getting closer to the wall, the player was surprised. He saw a door that he had never noticed before. Had she been there all this time and Lee hadn't paid attention to her? Behind that door was a field of potatoes that Tyler hadn't imagined was hiding such a precious resource. 2 weeks later, the protagonist looked very tired, and Dr. Brown asked if his patient was asleep. Lee immediately perked up. He replied that he was fine. He just ate too many potatoes. Roland wondered if the guy liked to play a Santa. Tyler replied that he could eat whatever he wanted there. The doctor was glad, but advised not to abuse it. The main character promised to follow the advice. Today, once again, the client's weight was measured. The employees were interested in whether the treatment with Asantha had any effect. Tyler noticed that his father was gone. He asked Obito where William was. Sanchez replied that Lee Sr. had an emergency at work. He could not attend. Anxious thoughts began to attack the guy. He was sure that everyone was tired of him, even his own father. The protagonist has done so much if there are no changes after everything that has happened. Tyler didn't want to think about how disappointed everyone would be. Lee squeezed his eyes shut. He was very afraid to look at the numbers on the scales and asked if he could open his eyes or not. The scales said 172 kilograms. Last time it was 1 kilogram more. It seems that the main character has lost a whole 1 kilogram. The guy's soul has become lighter. The whole team began to applaud and congratulate the client. For him, it is more of an achievement. Obito said that he has always believed in Tyler and is genuinely happy for him. This is just the beginning. Lee used to think that he could die at any moment, that he had no hope left, that he would die without being able to eat whatever he wanted as much as he wanted, even if it is only 1 kilogram. But the main character did it. For a long time, he only managed to keep the weight in place. But now the number on the scales has moved in the opposite direction. How much effort it cost the guy. Tyler burst into tears right in front of the whole team. He was happy that such a long effort began to bring results. Obito couldn't bear to look at the crying client. His heart was starting to break apart, which made the coach try to cheer him up in every possible way. In the end, Sanchez offered to buy the customer some candy at a sant. Then Lee sniffed one last time and stopped crying. The protagonist turned away to wipe the tears from his face with his hand. Afterward, Tyler asked if Obito knew that strawberry milk-flavored candies were the best. Sanchez couldn't believe that Lee had actually stopped crying after being offered candy. The character believed that one day he would be able to return to his former form if that happened. Obito asked Tyler. He had previously said that he was going to go to a hidden dungeon. The protagonist has confirmed he has harvested all the crops he was supposed to have, and now his sleight of hand has increased, plus he can now harvest the fruit he planted a few days ago. Then the trainer asked what kind of sleight of hand the guy had now. Lee replied that it was about 298. The client's words shocked Sanchez. Even the high-level blacksmiths in his guild only had 400. The protagonist replied that this is strange, although perhaps this is due to the fact that the player's experience is increased by a factor of 8. Obito didn't believe it. Even if his client was 8 times larger than usual, he doubted that players leveled up so quickly. Sanchez had heard that there were many ways to increase manual dexterity, the most common being the constant repetition of quests with manual dexterity requirements and rewards. Another way he is aware of consists of focused training without breaks, which also helps to increase manual dexterity. As it turns out, there are a lot of ways that Lee didn't even think about. Tyler, he's the type of person who tries to finish everything he started, and since it's related to food, he focuses all of his attention on that. Obito leaned over to the customer and said that he was indeed an incredible person. The protagonist could not even imagine that so much would grow from the seed of effort and care. Of course, fruits differ depending on how they are cared for. But for them to grow so fast and have such a gorgeous golden color, it shows that the player genuinely cared about the plant. Even the keeper didn't manage to grow a golden fruit. It can be more than just a delicious fruit. The old man was delighted to see the player and asked Tyler if he was going to leave the dungeon today. Lee replied that he would leave after he had harvested the fruit that had grown from the seed. The protagonist couldn't wait. He was wondering what kind of fruit had grown. Nico called the player to follow him. The keeper was glad to have found the right person who loved farming so much, while Tyler was thinking about the delicious fruit. The old man pointed to a tree that had grown from a seed as much as 7 pounds. All it takes is to stretch out your hand and say the word, after which the harvest will begin. The fruit on the tree magically detached from its branches, as if plucked by an invisible hand. And then the fruit flew to its owner, which delighted the main character. Then the lemon cracked, a watermelon appeared in the middle of it. All this was new to Tyler. The keeper wondered what the effect of the watermelon was, but Lee was thinking about how to eat the watermelon. Lost in thought about what the fruit tasted like, the guy didn't hear Nicole, who demanded to check the effect. Tyler sheepishly said that the watermelon had good effects, sleight of hand, and little wisdom. The protagonist slept in a carriage. He was given a ride by the NPS. The man began to wake up the player as they would soon arrive at the Emperor's city. NPS asked me to pack my things in advance so that I wouldn't waste time on it later. The guy arrived in the Emperor's city. He delighted the character, which is exactly what he expected. After that, Tyler began to look for where to go to sign up for the pre-competition. The protagonist stumbled upon a queue of the same players who wanted to sign up for the competition. The player took out a cup of hot contents and blew into the drink to cool it down. A sweet potato latte made with leftover pieces of vegetable is an incredibly delicious drink. Other players in the queue caught an interesting aroma and tried to find out that it smelled so delicious. On top of the delicate and pleasant taste of potatoes, warm, soft milk pours, giving it double tenderness. First with the help of soothing bubbles that the guy feels when his lips touch the cup, then with the sweet taste that fills Lee's mouth, and finally with the heat moving down his throat. The protagonist feels this delicate taste as many as 3 times. Tyler holds himself back so much, but he can't stop. A player in the crowd pointed at Lee to his friend, resented that the guy was already drinking his 20th mug, and said that he was holding back. It was the guy's turn. The character called the player to go inside. Tyler didn't expect his turn to come so quickly. Lee thought the line was longer. He hadn't drunk enough of the potato latte. NPS was about to think that the player would refuse to go, but the protagonist replied that he was going. The preliminary competition consists of 3 tests. If the guy copes with them in half an hour, then he passes. NPS suggested that the first challenge would be easy. The player just needed to defeat a level 80 monster. Although it's a bit difficult, if Tyler takes his time and calculates the time, he will be able to complete the task. Lee thought that he wasn't doing very well. The guy inspected the monster. The character's stomach rumbled treacherously. Tyler didn't have time to eat in line. Then the main character has only one thing to do, and that is to deal with the monster as soon as possible. The player rushed to attack. He was so hungry that he cut the monster into pieces in the same second. The NPS was horrified, and in front of his eyes, the guy killed the monster with a single blow. Tyler has passed the first test. It's time to start the second stage. The second location is the forest. The candidate needs to find clues and get out of the forest. Lee was delighted. There were so many edible herbs in this forest, he immediately began to gather ingredients. The man was terrified, wondering how the player knew that the key to exiting the forest was in the plants. Tyler noticed that the plant looked quite strange, a little different from the others. Usually people ignore this plant as it looks exactly like regular edible herbs. NPS replied that the guy passed the test. The protagonist did not understand that he did the right thing. Tyler was indeed an odd participant. The man offered to accompany the player to the third challenge, but Lee asked to be allowed to collect some plants. The character reminded that 30 minutes are given for all the tests. The guy asked to give him some time. The third challenge is to run to the exit by being on the opposite side of the entrance and survive. It is not necessary to kill monsters for this. The player's enemies were level 90 monkeys. Monkeys throw bananas. Users who hit the fruit immediately fly out of the network. The NPS was sure that the player had been lucky up to this point, but this time, while the man was pondering, Tyler caught a banana. The protagonist boasted to the character that the monkey had shared the fruit with him. The man replied that it was an attack, not a gift. Tyler decided to eat a banana. The NPS was sure that the participant would now fail the test, since bananas are addictive to the deadly poison. The guy liked everything. The tasks were easier, and they also shared a banana. Thanks to the fancy food god effect, the poison has no effect on the player. Even the monkeys were shocked. The protagonist asked the monsters to give him more bananas, but the monkeys attacked the guy out of anger, not to share the fruit. The man, tired of waiting, asked the participant to hurry up, but Lee wanted to eat more bananas. The monkey tried to attack suddenly, but it was useless. The protagonist was touched by the fact that the monster decided to hand him the cherished fruit. Tyler took this gesture as a parting gift and stroked the baby, promising to eat a banana. Finally, Lee said that the monkey is a really good baby. With his words, the guy unknowingly melted the heart of a level 90 monster. This time, the monkey really gave the player a bunch of bananas as a gift. Tyler was delighted with the gift. There were so many bananas, he loved the challenge. NPS embarrassedly interrupted the character, saying that when a monkey gives someone a bunch of bananas, it means something else. It's an invitation to spend the night together. Tyler has taken a liking to the monkey. After these words, the situation did not seem so nice, but on the contrary, frightening. In the palace, the character watched the progress of the tests. He was surprised by the stranger. The subordinate went to his superior, who asked him to report all suspicious foreigners. A member of the Order of Knights replied that the subordinate did not want to offer the foreigner a place in the Order of Knights. The contestant looks like they'll end up eating the entire guild and then take over the palace. Tyler did it in 29 minutes, 57 seconds, a total of about 30 minutes, but the player was picking herbs and eating bananas. But if he were to pass all the tests without wasting time, this is the personal opinion of the subordinate. The participant seems to be stronger than Jeanette, but is too often distracted. The long-awaited day of the tournament came. The whole city was looking forward to it. The tournament will be held on the island of Kron. This time, the creators decided to change the method of choosing the winner. More than 200 participants have passed the qualifying stage. The last remaining participant will win, which means that players will have to arrange battles and eliminate other players. The tournament will last 12 hours. If there is no winner at the end of this time, then he will be chosen by the highest number of points. Pre-qualified players will be brought together. The waiting room is a safe area where killing players is not possible. Jeanette walked into the waiting room, and the people around her began to whisper. The girl is a candidate for the winner, but she became popular only because of her brother, according to other participants. These guys are from the Falcon Guild, a guild created by active soldiers, though they are all low level, most likely from the elite unit. Jeanette didn't know how long she could tolerate people. They were always dissatisfied with everything and thought too highly of themselves. Compared to the rankers, these guys are nobody. These people who test their enemies are just pathetic. Tyler was almost late. The girl, looking at him, decided that Lee was another pathetic person who could not even be on time. But Jeanette was very surprised to see bananas. The protagonist didn't understand why everyone looked at him so askance. After peeling the cherished fruit, Tyler wanted to take a bite to feel the delicate sweetness in his mouth again. But then he saw Jeanette's displeased face and almost dropped the banana. Embarrassed, the player asked the girl if she wanted the fruit, and Tyler was covered in sweat. Jeanette did not expect to receive such an offer. Then the guy asked if the stranger was not hungry. Lee thought so because the girl was looking at him so intently. The gamer laughed sincerely. She found this situation funny. Jeanette was surprised that the stranger was not at all worried about being in such an atmosphere. Tyler asked if the girl was worried, and instead of answering, she handed the player a soda. Although it is a banana, if the main character eats it just like that, he can choke. Lee was touched by the fact that he was offered a drink. Tyler said the girl was very kind and thanked her for the friendly gesture. The player offered Jeanette to cook something delicious. It is unknown how long it will be necessary to wait for the start of the game. From his inventory, the protagonist took out a large, juicy watermelon. The gamer was surprised by such an inventory. Usually players carry other food with them. If you mix watermelon and cider, you get Manhwa. Jeanette wasn't so keen on the idea. She was sure this place wasn't suitable for such things. Asanta's inventory is beautiful. In it, the items remain intact and fresh. First, you need to take a tablespoon of watermelon pulp. Then you need to add a mixture of fruit, fresh condensed milk, and spicy cider. Seeing the dish, Jeanette no longer resisted. The chimhuachi looked charming. Tyler asked if the stranger would join him for a fresh, fruity dessert. The girl still overcame herself and refused chimhuachi. It is not necessary to eat in such an environment. The protagonist charmingly thanked the stranger for the food and began to eat dessert. Watermelon is cool and sweet, while cold cider adds extra freshness. The mixture of fruits is felt with each bite. The juice helps to soften the watermelon. Chimhuachi tastes so incredible, Tyler enjoyed every spoonful. Jeanette watched the stranger, who looked innocent and naive. The girl asked how long it took Tyler to complete the preliminary competition. The protagonist, while tasting a fresh and sweet dessert, replied that it took him about 29 minutes and 50 seconds. The gamer continued to hypnotize the player with her gaze. The guy asked the girl again if she would chimhuachi. This time Jeanette agreed. She doesn't even know Tyler, but she doesn't feel any tension or anxiety around him. Other players watched the characters from the sidelines. They considered this behavior unacceptable. One of the participants approached the guys and kicked a watermelon. The chimhuachi scattered all over the area. The protagonist was looking at the scattered remnants of the dessert, which was already scarce. The man, with obvious mockery, said that it was his fault and asked if the players were okay. Jeanette was furious. She asked what it meant. The soldier began to pretend that he had slipped. The man continued by saying that the guys were eating and being loud, so he thought the players were too funny. The gamer stood up for a new acquaintance. He ate it. Then the man replied that if the girl wanted, they could go out. Jeanette shouted that those bastards had ruined the mood before the tournament even started. However, it was not Jeanette who should have been afraid of Jeanette, but a nondescript boy. The gamer demanded that the man clean up after himself, since he was the one who made this mess. Tyler wanted to deal with the impudence, but the girl managed to stop the player. Jeanette said it could be dangerous and asked to be allowed to deal with it. The girl explained that this was what the soldiers had been waiting for, and that Tyler should be careful with the members of the Falcon Guild in the future. A new acquaintance promised to deal with the reptiles. She couldn't wait to pile on the falcons. After that, Jeanette agreed to go out with the man. They got on her nerves from the very beginning. It was announced live that right before the start of the match, Jeanette and the members of the Falcon Guild left the waiting room. Colin was in a panic. His sister shouldn't have gone after the falcons. She could make a mess. If you leave the waiting room, you'll show up at a random place. These guys have planned everything. Sarah didn't understand why Colin was making such a fuss. Jeanette was of a high level, so the elder brother explained that the Falcon Guild Master had a hidden Iron Blood Great Chieftain class. He can activate tactical buffs using his passcodes. and the whole situation is also displayed on his map. Jeanette was already waiting in ambush. The Falcons were waiting for the start of the tournament. They really thought of everything. With only a few seconds left before the tournament, the soldiers couldn't wait for it to start. Finally, the tournament began, and the man ran out of hiding. The Falcon dreamed of killing Jeanette with his own hands. The gamer turned out to be not as stupid as she could seem. He quickly smelled the catch. The soldier was confused. As the girl managed to understand everything and disappear, Jeanette said that the man had terrible secretiveness. She went on to say that she could easily sense someone's presence. If the Falcons had waited until the tournament started, they would have lived a little longer. The spectators were delighted. Jeanette killed 6 players at the very beginning of the tournament. Colin was genuinely worried about his younger sister. The girl asked the ranker to stop worrying. Guildmaster Sokolov realized the situation and punished his subordinate for not even being able to commit murder. It seems that the master has come up with another plan to put pressure on his opponent. The commander opened his map and placed a mark on it, intrigued the audience. The Falcon marked on the map the guy that he was next to Jeanette. The man wants to get the girl through him. Colin didn't understand why such a strong captain would aim at a weak player. The girl knew that everything would be fine with the player. She clearly knows more than she says. She was holding a huge bag of buns in her hands, which would last her for a short time. The Falcons surrounded Tyler. The guy was furious. He realized who was surrounding him. The captain quickly realized that the player meant something to Jeanette, despite the fact that they had only just met. The Falcons had no idea who they ran into. The guys did what they shouldn't. The guildmaster hoped that if he couldn't get to Jeanette, he would definitely be able to catch the boy. The players ruined a lovely watermelon that Lee had grown with his own hands, and the player rushed into battle. Not a single player could resist the guild's tactics. The guys could not even think how it would all end. The soldier was about to knock the guy out of the tournament. He swung his sword and prepared to strike. The Falcons didn't know who they were dealing with, so Lee easily parried off the man's attack. The soldier couldn't believe that such a thing was possible with such a low-level strength. As the enemy hesitated and tried to find an explanation for what had happened, Tyler dropped the soldier with a slight movement of his hand. Another Falcon was eliminated from the game, this time with the help of what was thought to be a weak character. The soldiers panicked. They were sure that they were going against a weakling. Tyler called the Falcons the enemies of the Huachi. He will never forgive them. The squad scattered in different directions. Dead subordinates began to appear on the guildmaster's map, and their number grew by the minute. One of the Falcons flew to the commander. It came to the player's soul, which causes panic in the guild. Scout noticed that the guy was fighting while drinking the blood of the two-headed troll. No matter how many Falcons hit the player, their health level does not change. The guildmaster was puzzled, as the blood of a two-headed troll is an expensive recovery potion. There is no other way for the players to explain the incredible stability, only by the fact that the guy drinks the potion like water. Then the captain wondered which guild the enemy belonged to. The leader hoped they hadn't messed with the wrong person. Tyler was. After killing all the enemies in the area, Lee regained his health completely. He used the skill of absorption and transformation, so when he eats, his health level is restored by 30–40%. A meeting has begun in the palace. The Empress thinks that the competition is getting more and more frantic. Word had reached her that one stranger had single-handedly dispatched an entire army. Emmy was surprised at the news, whether the outsider was not a member of any guild. The Empress asked for a magic crystal ball. The girl began to track the actions of the outlander, who was potentially dangerous to the Empire. Suddenly, Her Majesty's eyes widened. She saw something she clearly did not expect. Tyler was holding his sword in his hands. The girl recognized it from 1,000 and would not confuse it with anything. The entire stadium was watching the Falcon Guild, the spectators wondering if the soldiers would retreat. On the other hand, Jeanette continues to get rid of the rest of the players. Colin decided that his sister was trying to win the tournament. He was not interested if everything was so simple, but the girl noticed that everything could turn the other way. The elder brother did not understand the hint and asked again. The girl, Sarah, replied that the second half had not even begun yet. When the second half of the tournament begins, the boundaries of the island will begin to decrease. If the player is outside the border, they will take a lot of damage. Eventually, from abroad, all the players will be brought together, and then they will have no choice but to fight each other. Event monsters began to appear. The audience likes it. There's a twist to it. No one expected such a game. A huge toad appeared on the field. The players were clearly not mentally prepared for such a monster. Sarah noticed a strange character in the distance. He clearly reminded her of someone. The player avoids everything and does not hide from the very beginning. The girl is sure that he is waiting for the beginning of the second half. The participant waited for this moment. Before that, the player hid next to the monster. The character did not use his skill against weak monsters. Thanks to this, he retained enough strength. He will direct these powers at the strongest monster when it appears, using his legendary skill of absolute supremacy. Lawrence, before the appearance of the strongest monster, decided to conserve his mana and focus. During this time, Jeanette managed to cope with another group of players. This activity seemed boring for the gamer. Most of the players are very weak and easy to get rid of. Suddenly, things began to gain momentum. A level 140 Minotaur appeared from the shadows. The radius of the circle began to decrease. The girl knew that event monsters would appear in the second part, but now she did not really want to fight it. This mob wasn't supposed to appear in this tournament. The player levels aren't high enough. I wonder if the task force is aware of this. Because of this circle, you can't even move around normally. Most likely it's in the middle. It's the waiting room. It was for this reason that Jeanette won to the waiting room to avoid taking damage from the border. Players were frightened by the fact that the gamer was leading the monster directly to them. Jeanette assumed that the Minotaur was under someone's control, as she hadn't even attacked it. Lawrence took control of the monster to start killing other players. Everyone was surprised that the player decided to use the absolute domination skill. People don't use it because the penalty for it is very high. Using this skill in a tournament at this stage is ridiculous. Even if a player with this body type, it will still be carnage. The radius of the circle began to shrink again. At this rate, very soon there would be no room left for battles. Jeanette can't just run, she needs to buy herself time. The gamer threw a row of blades at the Minotaur, hoping to distract him a little. The difference in levels is so great that the monster didn't even take any damage. Jeanette's actions only made her opponent angrier. It was enough for the Minotaur to deliver one blow to carry the girl several meters. The gamer lost a lot of health. The attack immediately stunned the opponent. The Minotaur was too strong. One more hit and Jeanette would leave the game. She was upset that everything would end this way. Tyler arrived just in time. It was time to repay his debt to his new acquaintance. The gamer did not expect to see a funny guy on the verge of death. He behaves bravely. Jeanette didn't understand why the player would choose to protect her from such a powerful monster. The girl tried to warn her friend. She shouted for the guy to run away or better get out of the game. Tyler looked serious, but Lee had something insidious in his mind. No one could think of the player wanting to snack on the Minotaur. The guy had to prepare everything for the monster. It would be hot. The protagonist has old memories of how he was taught to cook on coals. After the player has put the coals, you need to check if the temperature is right. And when the temperature is perfect, you need to put the pickled ribs on a wire rack. After they are cooked, you need to immediately cut the ribs into convenient pieces. The cooked meat should be wrapped in a lettuce leaf along with pickled onions. Tyler was drooling. He had to eat the beef. Jeanette decided that the guy decided to protect her from the monster at the cost of his own life. The gamer replayed their first meeting in her head and was a little embarrassed. Tyler caught the girl's attention by offering a banana instead of rushing to the girl with questions or condemnation. It was warm and calm next to the stranger. He laughed as if nothing had happened, warming him with his sincere smile. The girl remembered how Tyler called her a good person because she shared cider. The guy was friendly. Jeanette couldn't resist asking Tyler not to be reckless for her sake. The gamer asked not to sacrifice the guy for the sake of the girl, but to save himself while he could. The protagonist did not understand what the new acquaintance was talking about. Tyler was distracted. The Minotaur threw the axe directly at the guy, but he managed to jump away. The player realized that his opponent was strong, but it was even more interesting than just killing the monster. Jeanette was amazed at how deftly her acquaintance dodged the Minotaur's attacks. The protagonist wanted to strike, but the enemy repelled the attack with his weapon. After that, the enemy struck the ground with his sword with all his might, making a crack on it. The rift was going straight for Tyler, but he had a little trick to it. Lee activated the Mahaba ring. The skill absorption can be used once. The player began to absorb all the power of the Minotaur. His attack was ineffective. After that, Tyler decided to strike back, but this time with renewed vigor. The bull looked very tasty. The main character's eyes burned with anticipation of a delicious dinner. The Minotaur was successfully killed. The guy received 40 fame points and 120 tournament points. At the same moment the tournament ended, Jeanette rushed to the hero to find out how he felt. The gamer said that soon the players will move to another stadium. We need to prepare. Tyler's first order of business was to gather all the necessary ingredients before he was moved to another location. All survivors up to this point will be transferred from the island to the stadium. The host congratulated the players. Soon everyone will be able to see their earned points and the places received will be announced. The protagonist apologized to a new acquaintance and then asked if there would be more bulls, but the tournament was over. This news upset Tyler, who wanted to get as much beef as possible. Finally, they began to announce the seats. Starting from the 10th, the players listened eagerly. Jeanette was in second place. She was disappointed because the girl had put in a lot of effort. And when it was time to name the long-awaited winner, the gamer turned to Tyler to thank him. However, there was no trace of the guy. He had just been standing nearby, and now he was nowhere to be seen. The Empress was to reward the winner. Everyone froze in anticipation. Her Majesty is approached by a subordinate with unpleasant news, which Emmy needs to learn right now. The winner escaped. The audience was waiting for the name of the player who took the first place to be announced. Emmy didn't understand how the winner could just walk away. The girl tried to justify herself to the Empress. The maid saw the player running away and asked where he was going. At such a crucial moment, Lee replied that he urgently needed to eat beef. The Empress asked if the girl had told the winner that the award had already begun, and the maid informed the player about it. Tyler left the stadium very quickly with an extremely happy face. This story made Her Majesty laugh. She had never heard such a stupid reason. The maid promised to find a winner right away, but Emmy understood the player. That's enough to enjoy the delicious meat. The Empress said that they had to go back. It was all right. They didn't need such ceremonies. Her Majesty remembered her chef. She understood why her lover had given the guy her kitchen knife. On the screens, it was announced to the audience that the winner had disappeared, and the Empress was returning to the palace. Colin was worried about his sister. She must have been upset, but she did a good job. Jeanette pondered the news that the winner was gone. Only that player was gone. The gamer began to understand what was what, whether this guy had taken the first place. The main character was doing his favorite thing. He was cooking Minotaur meat. Tyler couldn't look at the beef. It's so gorgeous that it's dazzling in its divinity. It was time to start the meal. The guy took wooden sticks and began to tear the delicate shell of the yolk. The tender yolk began to spread over the meat. The player stirred the dish with chopsticks so that the yolk soaked everything. With glowing eyes, Tyler brought the coveted beef to his mouth. The savory taste of yuko, along with the sweet seasonings. Even the freshness of the pear goes well with the meat. Beef of this quality is hard to come by, so Lee decided to proceed with the second course. Cold noodles with boiled egg, a refreshing sound caressed the guy's ears. Tyler took one prime rib along with the noodles. Today was a good day for the player. At first he feels cool and soft noodles mixed with spices and sour sauce. It seems to neutralize the savory sauce, along with the structure of the meat. The protagonist was grateful to the Minotaur for such a wonderful meal. Lee only had lettuce and cherry tomatoes, but thanks to the game, the guy had already forgotten about them. Tyler was happy to be able to eat whatever he wanted without the threat of death. The player feels great. He ate his fill, lay down on the grass, and enjoyed the moment. The value of food, the Minotaur Earth Shaker skill, can be acquired if Tyler wishes to acquire it. The Earth Shake skill has been successfully acquired. If the protagonist becomes as strong as the Minotaur, Lee will be able to eat more delicious food. The guy was so calm. He is happy in this world. He has a good figure. There is no need to worry about calories and sports. After a long battle and a good meal, accompanied by the rustling of leaves and the singing of birds, Lee fell asleep. The Empress was sitting on her throne when a servant approached her and informed her that the victor had arrived. Tyler entered the hall and bowed to Her Majesty, and Emmy thanked the player for bringing something new to the tournament. As a reward, he may inherit her place in the near future. The protagonist thanked the Empress, but was distracted by an interesting smell. Emmy noticed that something was wrong with the stranger. Something was bothering him. Tyler replied that he was fine, but he wanted to ask the Empress a question. He had heard that whoever won the tournament would be able to ask Her Majesty for one small wish. Singer was a very sincere man. He devoted himself to cooking, even without having taste. This stranger has his sword, so Emmy thought the player was an honest man, but she seems to be mistaken. So what does the victor want? Something from the treasury, the earth, maybe millions of gold. Tyler said that his request was really difficult. The Empress was sure that he was like everyone else. Lee asked Her Majesty for the right to eat spam, something she didn't expect to hear from a stranger. Spam is canned ham from American military bases in the 50s and 60s. Some time ago, when the protagonist arrived at the palace, he was met by a servant. The man asked the winner to follow him, when suddenly the player sensed him. Tyler had smelled it since he came here. He had no doubts. In the palace, someone was obviously cooking dishes with the addition of spam. The guy could not think about anything else. This ham must be great. The Empress must be very hungry. It is indeed a smell that is difficult to resist, impossible to resist. Emmy laughed. She expected the winner to demand something of value. Tyler didn't understand why Her Majesty was laughing. He hadn't said anything funny. How could you ask for anything else when it smelled like that? Affinity with the Empress has increased, gaining 5 respect points and 5 reputation points. Emmy asked if the winner had decided to eat spam. Tyler was glad of the opportunity. It seems that the chefs were just preparing ham. The Empress invited the main character to join the dinner. Her Majesty stood up and asked him to follow her. Lee was glad that his wish would be granted. In the imperial dining room, a chic table was laid, on which there were many different dishes. Tyler was delighted. There were a lot of dishes in front of him, and Emmy wasn't wrong about the guy. The protagonist began his speech. He would not dare to say it in the presence of Her Majesty. The guy is both grateful and frightened. The Empress said that everything was all right. The victor could speak freely. He was still not familiar with this kind of conversation. Tyler asked if he could just call Her Majesty Emmy. The Empress allowed herself to be called that. The servant was shocked. The guy asked why the girl was spam in such a form. The player's heart hurt from this. Could it be a problem that the dish was not properly cooked? Emmy was indignant. Tyler replied that there was a better way to prepare spam. The Empress was indignant. A better way than the one used by the imperial chiefs. The protagonist offered Her Majesty to cook the cherished ham. The guy was prepared in the kitchen and given all the necessary ingredients for his dish. Lee was just frying ham. So far, the Emmys haven't seen anything out of the ordinary. But there's something more important. It's white rice, spam is best eaten with it, the flavors blend perfectly. The Empress watched as the winner was genuinely passionate about cooking. Finally, the dish was ready and you could sit down at the table to enjoy the gorgeous ham. Now Tyler offered to teach Emmy how to eat this dish properly to get the most flavor. To begin with, you need to take some rice in a spoon, but not with a heap, but so that there is still free space. You need to put a piece of ham on top. The Empress did not understand why there was so much difficulty. And now you just have to eat it. Was it really that simple? And Emmy didn't even know about this recipe. 2 such simple ingredients were able to give such a bright taste. The Empress was delighted. The moment when the ham and rice are combined, the texture is preserved, it is fully cooked and no longer so salty. Its fat content deepens the flavor of each grain of rice, which seems to be enough for a complete meal. The protagonist asked Her Majesty how she was spam. The girl was delicious. Emmy asked if it was the winner's wish. He should taste what he had prepared. The protagonist sat down at the table and thanked the Empress for the food. Ham goes well with rice. It's also great with ramen or even just ketchup. Spam a unique ingredient. Even if you just eat it with rice, even if you don't have an appetite, you will eat the whole bowl and not notice. Emmy had never felt so ignorant. She didn't know how delicious it was with rice. Watching the girl was funny. She said that this dish was inexpensive, but she didn't expect that a stranger would be able to satisfy the Empress. A dish doesn't have to be expensive to satisfy a person. Food tastes good, not because of the price. It tastes good because it is prepared by the people who make us happy. Tyler was right. It was time to talk about one person who was dear to the Empress. The character admitted that he came here as a winner, but he had another motive. The player is here because of Captain Singer, so Tyler was looking for a way to contact Her Majesty. She asked what the guy had asked the boss to do. Lee replied that he had asked Emmy to cook a great dish. Of course, the dish turned out to be excellent. It was the captain's request, and this dish was so simple, the Empress asked what the winner's skill was. Tyler began to list. He's learning to wield a sword in farming, a little bit of mage, you name it. An ordinary outsider would develop in one field of activity, but the player is another. He is strong enough to win. The protagonist replied that it was all because he ate and worked well. The Empress asked if she could ask the player to cook any dish. Tyler wondered what kind of food the Empress liked. It shouldn't be too luxurious because she likes Spam. But the player may find themselves in a situation where they have to eat food they don't know. Emmy wanted 2 flounders, and that's what the guy was afraid of. A cold sweat broke out on Tyler's face, but an inner voice told him that Lee could handle it.